The result was absolutely shocking. Yoo So-yeon, a genius born into the prestigious Jusin clan, one of South Korea's 5 legendary families, who possessed talent far beyond ordinary people, ended up losing to an absolute nobody during the entrance exams for Valhalla, one of the nation's top 3 hunter academies. This academy is famous for its brutal competition, with a staggering acceptance rate of just 1 in 500. Every single year, countless hunters dream of wearing the Valhalla crest, but fewer than 150 actually manage to graduate with that prestigious title. The cutthroat competition begins the moment you step through the doors. Even though So-yeon possessed the mana capacity of a high school student when she was only 10 years old, she could channel mana into her sword to reinforce her weapon by the age of 13, and at 16, she challenged every single member of the Jusin clan and defeated them all. But those are just the official records. Rumors say that So-yeon can even directly communicate with the clan's guardian constellation, and that is why the Jusin clan places such massive expectations on her. The reason South Korea has 5 great families in the first place is that a guardian constellation is bound to each house. Normally, a regular hunter only receives a simple blessing or signs a basic contract with a constellation. However, the guardian constellations of the 5 great families are on a completely different level. There is the Jusin clan of the Sword God, the Gangsan clan of the Spear Saint, the Choin clan of the Blade Emperor, the O clan of the Fist King, and the Dojin clan of the Bow God. Members of these 5 families who receive blessings from their respective constellations possess talent and power that far eclipse ordinary people. But there is a massive difference between receiving a simple blessing and direct contact. To communicate with a guardian deity means to forge a direct, soul-binding contract with them. If those rumors are true, then Yoo So-yeon is a peerless genius. But even the greatest genius is nothing but an absolute joke before Joo-hyuk. Everyone expected an earth-shattering clash where Yoo So-yeon would take down her opponent in a single strike. But nope. The one who got wiped out in a single move was none other than Yoo So-yeon herself. Jaws dropped all over the arena, leaving the reporters, Valhalla's head coach Lee Sang-gon, and even the proud heirs of the Jusin clan frozen in absolute shock. Joo-hyuk just stared down at his fallen opponent with eyes full of sheer boredom. What the heck? Why is everyone so incredibly weak? Is this seriously the future 300 years later? Wait, why is he asking that? Simply put, 300 years ago, inside the Tower of Destruction, the god of destruction, Barshe, and the martial god, Kim Hyuno, had an epic showdown. The martial god defeated the tower's boss, successfully saving the world from total annihilation. But epic showdown. My foot. The tower began shaking violently right after Barshe's death. Kim Hyuno clutched his stomach in agonizing pain, wondering if the tower was collapsing just because he killed the boss. And turns out, that was exactly the case. Facing his final moments as his life flashed before his eyes, he suddenly thought of his beloved disciples. Thank goodness he didn't drag them along, or they would have all died with him. Although he hated to go out like this, he could only give a foolish laugh before being crushed into a pile of bloody mush. But death was not the end. Kim Hyuno was reincarnated into the body of a 17-year-old kid, exactly 300 years after the Tower of Destruction collapsed. Honestly, he was just completely satisfied to be given another chance at life. Having a weaker and younger body compared to his glory days as the martial god was not a big deal at all. If he got back to training, he was confident he could live a life of absolute luxury, well, at least until that annoying translucent window popped up. And of course, just like a persistent ex, that system window always manages to cling to hunters no matter what. A notification suddenly slapped him right in the face. The Tower of Destruction will reappear in 5 years. Please prepare. This made Kim Joo-hyuk absolutely lose his mind. He silently cursed that damn bastard Barsha. If he had known this would happen, he should have thrown that bastard straight into a pit of boiling magma. But now, crying over spilled milk wouldn't change his cruel reality. He resolved to destroy the tower once and for all, then kick back and enjoy his well-deserved life of luxury. But the road to early retirement was paved with endless headaches. The system notified Kim Joo-hyuk that he could reclaim his lost divine weapons and missing memories on the 3rd floor, in the 5th room to the right, inside Valhalla. And that was the exact reason why he participated in this academy entrance exam. Day 4 of the brutal top 10 ranking battles finally began. This time, Kim Joo-hyuk's opponent was the eldest son of the O clan, Oh Sung. He was absolutely clueless when it came to academics, had zero talent for strategy, and his martial arts technique was downright embarrassing. However, he was blessed with one overwhelming, freakish trait: raw physical strength. Oh Sung could easily perform feats that others couldn't even dream of without mana. And with just a little bit of training, his destructive power would multiply tenfold. Oh Sung's monstrous physical strength was completely innate. That freakish physical advantage alone was more than enough for him to be hailed as a genius. Seeing that his opponent didn't look threatening at all, he confidently assumed he would squash Kim Joo-hyuk in seconds and use the easy victory to boost his own fame. Too bad that only happens in his dreams. Talk about an absolute musclehead. After just a few mocking words from Kim Joo-hyuk, the guy completely lost his cool and lunged forward without a single thought. Kim Joo-hyuk knew he couldn't win a raw battle of strength in his current body, since Oh Sung's physical power was nothing to sneeze at. However, being a giant doesn't automatically make you the winner. Martial arts are meant to maximize your physical potential and sharp observational skills. If you fail to combine the two, this is exactly how you end up. With a split-second sidestep, Kim Joo-hyuk dodged the lumbering attack, causing the giant to lose his balance. Instantly, he spun around and delivered a decisive blow right to his opponent's chest, sending him crashing onto the arena floor in pure agony. Having easily won this meaningless match, Kim Joo-hyuk simply turned on his heel and walked away with a cold, indifferent look. The crowd of reporters and guild representatives gathered there kept whispering and judging his abilities. Among them was the patriarch of the Fist King clan. He quickly realized that Kim Joo-hyuk's strike was no ordinary attack. Sure, his son didn't care about martial arts and only focused on building muscle, but the boy could still easily dodge a punch from anyone his age. Yet, Se-hyuk couldn't dodge that punch. At first, Se-hyuk lost his cool and blindly rushed his opponent, even using magic he barely ever touched just to end the fight quickly. But Kim Joo-hyuk simply tilted his head to the side to dodge it. Since Se-hyuk recklessly assumed his strike would land, he had shifted his entire center of gravity forward. The patriarch stroked his chin in deep thought. So, that kid's movement speed was actually faster than Se-hyuk's absolute limit. The exact moment Se-hyuk charged, Kim Joo-hyuk already had his countermove planned out. That level of tactical awareness alone is a terrifying talent. Seemingly thrilled, the patriarch glanced around at the other guild recruiters before looking back at our main character, muttering to himself, "I will recruit this kid into our clan, no matter what it takes." With the break over, the next match was officially underway. Kim Joo-hyuk's next opponent was the second daughter of the prestigious Choi family, Choi Arin. The moment she stepped out, the guys in the stands absolutely lost their minds, screaming and cheering for her like crazy. Joo-hyuk cringed so hard at the sight, muttering that they looked like a bunch of total creeps. Why on earth were grown men, who had already finished military service, calling a 17-year-old girl big sister? He figured this match would start like all the others with his opponent rushing in first. But boy, was he wrong. Instead, both of them just stood there staring, waiting for the other to make a move. Fine. If that's how it's gonna be, Joo-hyuk decided he'd strike first. Flashing a villainous smirk, he took a slow, casual step forward. Right then, Erin saw her opening. She drew her sword and unleashed a decisive, swift slash. But just like his previous fights, Joo-hyuk vanished into thin air in the blink of an eye, only to materialize right next to her. A massive question mark practically popped over Erin's head. If you stare so intensely at the exact spot you're trying to hit, Joo-hyuk teased, you're basically telegraphing your entire attack. With that, he delivered a sharp counterblow, sending Erin flying backward. Fortunately, she managed to block with her sword to stay on her feet. But before she could even catch her breath, Joo-hyuk appeared right in front of her like a lingering ghost, delivering another brutal strike. "Let's see you block this one." Caught completely off guard, Erin couldn't mount a defense. She took the full force of the blow and collapsed on the spot. Looking down at his defeated opponent, Joo-hyuk felt like his last hit was slightly off, but whatever, a win is a win. And just like that, the top 10 tournament officially came to a close. Sitting proudly at the absolute top of the rankings was none other than Kim Joo-hyuk. Exhausted, he trudged out of the arena, massaging his stiff shoulders, only to immediately run into a horde of annoying guild recruiters. Talk about a pain in the neck. Joo-hyuk gave them a death stare, spitting out a cold warning. "All of you, shut up." By the next morning, news of the top-ranked rookie cursing out and chasing away major guilds had spread like wildfire across the media. Netizens went wild, with comments constantly popping up asking if Joo-hyuk was some kind of psychopath or a straight-up villain. But regardless of the drama, our boy was still the center of attention and proudly walked into Valhalla entirely on his own merit. First on the agenda for orientation was listening to the staff flex about the school, followed by some boring speeches from the Academy's founders. Actually, make that the Academy's top brass. Watching Joo-hyuk yawn his head off during the speeches, some of the students standing nearby instantly felt intimidated. He wondered if he was standing out a bit too much today. But honestly, that worked out perfectly. Now he wouldn't have to deal with the hassle of making friends. After enduring what felt like an eternity of boring speeches, the entrance ceremony finally came to an end. The students were then randomly assigned to their respective classes. Inside the virtual combat simulation room, Kim Yi-gun, the instructor for Class 2-4, scanned his students and wondered if his life was about to end. Why on earth did the Academy set up the classes like this? Wasn't this supposed to be random? Standing right there was So-yeon from the Jusin clan, and right next to her was Choi-arin from the Choi clan. The massive guy in the middle was Se-hyuk from the Oh-seon clan. How did three geniuses from the Great Five families end up in the exact same class? And to top it off, why was that crazy bastard Kim Joo-hyuk here too? Despite his internal panic, he quickly regained his composure. He introduced himself as their homeroom teacher and instructor, Kim Yi-gun. The second he finished speaking, he immediately pressed a button on the console. Suddenly, the room began to shake violently, teleporting them all into a different dimension where a swarm of about 100 goblins was waiting outside. Spotting their fresh prey, the monsters instantly lunged forward in a frenzy. But fortunately, the students were protected by a magic barrier, preventing any physical attacks from getting through. Kim Yi-gun called Kim Joo-hyuk over and asked if he could handle all these monsters by himself. Clearly, this instructor had a hidden agenda. He wanted to embarrass Kim Joo-hyuk in front of everyone and knock him down a peg. After all, these students have only ever seen monsters in textbooks, never in real life. It is no wonder he is terrified. So stop pretending to analyze it. Refuse, and he will pounce the moment I hesitate. That is exactly what he wants. Kim Joo-hyuk thought about it for a long moment. Then, he let out a shady smirk. Seeing this, the instructor got furious and bitterly snapped at Kim Joo-hyuk to just get on with it. But our main character was no fool. Why should he do this on his very first day? He looked the instructor dead in the eye and asked what the reward for this test would be. Kim Yi-gun was stunned for a moment, but eventually agreed to make a deal. Fine, here is your condition. If you clear out all the monsters, I will do whatever you want, within my power. Oh, now we are speaking the same language. It is a bit lacking, but it will do. Kim Joo-hyuk agreed to the terms. Without letting the teacher ramble on, the young man reached out and demanded the sword behind him. After all, how could he fight these beasts empty-handed? And just like that, right in front of everyone, Kim Joo-hyuk began swinging his sword relentlessly. His strikes were incredibly precise, hitting their weak spots and slicing the monsters' throats in a single slash. As he fought, he couldn't help but reminisce about the past. It has been 300 years since I last held a sword, but I guess I am not too rusty. Back then, the world was turned upside down by monsters, and humans used whatever they could find as weapons. But the sword was always the most familiar tool. Just as I thought, these monsters are incredibly simple. They are just NPC monsters, clever illusions engineered for training. While he was outside in a bloodthirsty frenzy, inside the control room, Kim Yi-gun was scared out of his wits, breaking into a cold sweat. It is unbelievable. The weapon I gave Kim Joo-hyuk was just an ordinary sword. It does not have any magical properties or special power, yet he can slice through everything so easily. He is cutting those monsters like butter. Of course, Kim Yi-gun was not the only one shocked. Even the three students from the three prestigious families thought this was absolutely insane. As the final monster collapsed, Kim Joo-hyuk slowly sheathed his sword, turned to the instructor, and stated his demand. I want to go down to the constellation room. You will keep your word, right, teach? A few hours later, their very first class finally came to an end. Kim Joo-hyuk listened to the lecture with a face so lifeless, it looked like his soul was leaving his body. It felt like pure torture. His original plan was to just grab what he needed and get out of here as fast as possible, so why on earth was he stuck listening to this nonsense? Come to think of it, he had never even considered getting an education, let alone stepping foot inside a school before. But it was not completely useless. Although the class was incredibly boring, he managed to gather some intel, especially regarding the constellations. In Kim Joo-hyuk's past life, there was no such thing as a constellation. To put it simply, a constellation is a term for the ascension of those destined for greatness to become gods. Most constellations are tied to hunters as their relics, and they grant them extraordinary powers. Valhalla in South Korea is the third largest academy in the world. With so many constellations and relics, It seemed like conventional swordsmanship and monster-slaying techniques were completely useless to them. Therefore, Kim Joo-hyuk decided to head to the dormitory and seriously train his martial arts. This body of his was desperately weak. His train of thought was suddenly interrupted by the arrival of the second daughter of the Choi family, Choi Arin. "Teach me swordsmanship." That was the first thing she blurted out the moment Kim Joo-hyuk turned around. But as you know, he couldn't care less, so his answer was a flat no. But the girl just stood there and repeated herself. By this point, Kim Joo-hyuk had completely run out of patience. With a glare of pure rage, he snapped right in her face. "Are you deaf or something? Stop clinging to me. I have zero intention of teaching you, so get lost." With that, the young man turned on his heel and walked away, leaving the wealthy young lady standing there utterly dumbfounded. Meanwhile, in the staff room, the head coach was trying to comfort Kim Yi-gun after his humiliating ordeal. He still could not believe that Kim Joo-hyuk was actually a high school student, especially after witnessing him wipe out 120 monsters inside the virtual combat room with absolute perfection, despite never having seen a monster in real life. Even though his background is totally ordinary, an orphan from a small shelter in a rough neighborhood, he possesses this mind-blowing strength. Kim Yi-gun suspected he was an imposter, but the head coach did not think so. After all, what kind of imposter would be crazy enough to infiltrate Valhalla and cause a massive scene at the entrance ceremony? Well, he had a point. Kim Yi-gun continued to whine about what lay ahead next year. If they did not handle Kim Joo-hyuk properly, it would be impossible to control those three kids from the prestigious families. The head coach, Lee Sang-cheol, offered some sympathy, but then pointed out that he was actually quite lucky, because a student from the powerful Ventric family was assigned to a different class. Only then did Kim Yi-gun feel a bit relieved, realizing his situation was much better than the classroom next door. Apparently, Rockdil Ventric, a member of a branch family of the Ventric clan, had been expelled for causing trouble at a British academy. The next day, he thought he could finally enjoy a quiet, normal student life. But when you are a drama magnet, trouble follows you wherever you go. Just as he was daydreaming about becoming filthy rich in the future, he was rudely interrupted by Rockdil Ventric from the infamous Ventric family and his follower, Uriah de Felix. Having reincarnated into this world, Kim Joo-hyuk obviously had no idea who this guy was. So when the guy got right in his face, Joo-hyuk had to ask who he even was. Rockdil glared at him, thinking to himself that this guy was incredibly rude and uneducated. He hadn't even heard of the Ventric family. Cutting straight to the chase, Rockdil stared at him with ambitious eyes and said, "Hey, do you want to get stronger?" In most noble families, branch families usually have a harder time getting power and wealth than the direct bloodline. However, the Ventric family has a unique trait concerning their guardian constellation, making them quite different from everyone else. Usually, a high-ranking or S-class guardian constellation will protect the family, directly choosing a member to bestow their power and protection upon. But with the Ventric family, the contract is decided by the family members themselves, not the constellation. This setup allows the chosen person to form a contract without any complaints from the constellation. And thanks to this unique arrangement, the Ventric family wields immense power all over Europe. As long as you are a Ventric, you can become a contractor regardless of your lineage, allowing branch families to hold power equal to the main family line. Backed by this massive family influence, Rockdil had become incredibly arrogant. Not long ago, he was actually expelled from the British Academy for causing a massive scene. To make up for his expulsion, he planned to recruit Kim Joo-hyuk, the star of the opening ceremony, to his side. "If you join me, I'll take you to my family's constellation and..." But before he could even finish, he was immediately cut off. "So what, you idiot? Do I look stupid to you? You don't actually care about me. All you've been doing this whole time is bragging. And now you're spouting this nonsense? You are definitely a dumbass. Am I wrong?" Rockdil had never been insulted like this before. Furious, he was about to throw hands with this rude bastard, but before he could do anything, a voice boomed, "What's all the racket?" A stern voice echoed from behind them. "Go back to your seat, Rockdil Ventric." Humiliated twice in a row, he turned around in a rage and snapped at the teacher. "Did you just call me by my full name?" But the teacher wasn't about to take his attitude and fired right back. "This isn't the British Academy, it's Valhalla. I don't care how powerful your Ventric family is. While you're a student here, you listen to me, your advisor." Having his face chewed out like that, Rockdil couldn't do a single thing. He could only tuck his tail and walk away in sheer frustration. After classes ended, Kim Joo-hyuk felt pretty bored. He didn't get any new leads on the constellations today, and instead, he had to waste his time dealing with an absolute idiot. As he was walking home, cursing out the bastard who annoyed him, Choi Arin suddenly materialized behind him like a ghost out of nowhere. She repeated the exact same line, "Teach me your swordsmanship," leaving Kim Joo-hyuk completely speechless. He turned to her and threatened, "Do you want to get humiliated too?" Meanwhile, in a premium room at the Valhalla Academy dormitory, Rockdill was absolutely losing it. After being humiliated in front of everyone by a random orphan with no backing, Rockdill trashed his entire room in a blind rage. He then grabbed Yuria by the hair and slammed her head hard against the floor, snarling, "Hey, Yuria, answer me. Do you still think you're some high and mighty princess of the royal family? Should I throw you out on the streets? Contact Jera. I have a few pests that need to be taken care of. Also, that kid from the rising family in class 2. Tell Lorik I want to see him." Meanwhile, in Kim Joo-hyuk's room, even though it was late at night, he was still working hard to hit the books. Oh wait, actually, he was working out. But he gassed out halfway through, panting like a dog. This body is absolute garbage. I can't even use magic anymore. Just then, Kim Joo-hyuk remembered his transaction with Choi Arin from earlier. Just to get her off his back, he had casually demanded 10 million won for a single lesson. He figured she'd back down, but she proved him completely wrong. The girl was absolutely loaded. Choi Arin didn't even hesitate. She asked for his account number and wired the cash instantly. Even with 100 million won sitting in his account, Kim Joo-hyuk decided to play dirty and play dumb. He flashed a bright smile and said, "No way, I'm not teaching you." To be honest, he was actually shocked that a student like her could drop 100 million won in the blink of an eye. Kim Joo-hyuk stroked his chin in deep thought. If I teach her without revealing my own secrets, that's basically free money. Whatever. It's just money. I can earn it myself, so it doesn't matter. Even though my mana is pitifully low, packing his shovel and gear, he prepared to set off on a high-stakes mission, saying, "All right, let's go find that secret chamber." Before even enrolling in this school, he had already scouted the entire area. Unfortunately, most of the records hidden 300 years ago had already been destroyed. But according to his research, at least 4 records remained, and he was certain they were hidden up in the mountains of Valhalla. Fortunately, he could locate them using the magic stone he brought along, which would react as he got closer. So, Kim Joo-hyuk strained with all his might, squeezing out every drop of what little magic he had to find them. Ta-da! Thanks to all that straining, he actually found them, and a beam of light burst from the ground. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began digging and clawing at the dirt. His hands were working fast, but his mouth was moving faster, cursing his damn weak body. If he had known he would have to work this hard, he would have buried it somewhere much shallower. Besides, if it wasn't for that damn Tower of Destruction 300 years ago, he wouldn't be suffering like this today. Back then, a world on the brink of destruction had absolutely no place for all his material wealth. So, Kim Joo-hyuk drew up some maps and buried every single bit of it. After digging and digging all the way until morning, Kim Joo-hyuk finally hit the roof of the underground vault. The only problem was, these locks were highly specialized, and a regular key wouldn't even fit the keyholes. He squeezed out the last bit of his mana, weaving a magic formula to shape it into a key. Perfect. It fits like a glove. At this rate, maybe I should quit being a hunter and become a professional lockpicker. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately jumped down, staring at the glittering mountain of gold and jewels before him. He was so happy he could lose his mind, even though it was all his to begin with. "How have you guys been, my sweet little babies?" That was all Kim Joo-hyuk could manage to mutter at that moment. Now I don't have to worry about money ever again. Honestly, if I sell all of this, I might end up richer than those top clans. He had previously infused them with a bit of magic to keep the seal alive, but the day to finally use them had arrived. Kim Joo-hyuk picked up the gemstones and began absorbing all the magic within them. Just as expected, a rush of pure energy came flooding into his body. It was a tingly, euphoric, and utterly indescribable feeling. Now, it was time to clean up this place. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered if he should just leave the heavy gold bars behind and only take the light, high-value gems, because trying to carry this entire stash would literally be the death of him, and he really was near death. When Kim Joo-hyuk arrived at class, his mind was completely blank, and his limbs felt so heavy they were about to fall right off. He collapsed onto his desk in exhaustion, completely ignoring Choi Arin, who was sitting right next to him. She hit him with her usual catchphrase, "Teach me swordsmanship," leaving Kim Joo-hyuk wondering why on earth she was as clingy as a leech. According to the info he gathered when he reincarnated, out of the 5 top clans, The Choi Jin clan was the one famous for practicing swordsmanship. So the real question was, why was she bothering him? In response, Choi Erin said she wanted. Kim Joo-hyuk pressed further. What about your father? He is the patriarch of the Choi Jin clan, isn't he? He is way better at swordsmanship than me. Am I wrong? But before Choi Erin could even answer, the door swung open, and the teacher called Kim Joo-hyuk to the staff room. The moment he heard it was about the constellation room, he bolted after him without a second thought. Maybe he finally felt Choi Erin's sincerity, because he tossed a few words over his shoulder to her before walking out. Meet me at the training grounds tomorrow at 6 in the morning. Once they reached the staff room, Kim Lee-gun got straight to the point. Specifically, your request to enter the constellation room has been approved, but the catch is, you are only allowed in the basement, and you absolutely cannot go any lower than the first basement floor. That sounded fair enough. Even though he paused for a split second, Kim Joo-hyuk immediately agreed with a smile. He didn't forget to ask when he could go. After thinking it over, Kim Lee-gun said that if possible, let's head over tonight while the iron is hot. Kim Lee-gun thought his student would throw a tantrum over not being allowed onto the second floor, so he was surprised when the kid accepted it so easily. That night, as scheduled, the teacher put on his handsome face and led the kid to Valhalla's ultimate treasure, the constellation room. The place was heavily guarded because of its sheer importance, being the very thing that made Valhalla one of the top 3 academies. Kim Joo-hyuk took a quick look around, thoroughly impressed. It wasn't just the tight security, but the outer walls themselves. They were covered in all kinds of magical wards, save for the entrance. Kim Joo-hyuk suddenly turned to his teacher and asked, what would actually happen if I went down to the second floor? Hearing that, Kim Lee-gun got a bit nervous and answered quickly before his student could do anything stupid. Well, you won't become a criminal, but you will be expelled immediately, and they'll wipe your memories of this place before kicking you out. On the second floor, the constellation's magic is incredibly violent. If you touch it, your mind will literally shatter, and you'll go completely insane. With all his questions answered, Kim Joo-hyuk now had 30 minutes to spend inside. A glowing green system alert popped up again, reminding him, retrieve your weapon on the 3rd floor, right room of Valhalla. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't care about getting expelled or anything like that. The only reason he came to Valhalla in the first place was for his weapon, and his first stop was the 3rd basement floor. But after taking just a few steps, he suddenly bumped into something. Out of nowhere, a system prompt popped up with a request, and before he knew it, it dragged Kim Joo-hyuk into a bizarre room. Long time no see. Kim Hyun, oh, that was the voice he heard after being sucked in, and standing right there in front of him was that bastard Barsh, the Tower King of the Tower of Destruction. It's been 300 years. Is this a happy reunion? Not quite. Barche was about to say more, but he was cut off by a brutal punch straight to the mouth with a loud smack. Kim Joo-hyuk was absolutely fuming, screaming right in his face. Oh, I'm just so thrilled to see you again. You bastard Bark. Baekcheol struggled to his feet, frantically waving his hands as he begged Kim Do-hyuk to chill out and just listen to his explanation first. But yeah, there was absolutely no chill to be found. For every word that came out of the kid's mouth, Kim Do-hyuk answered with a brutal punch to the face. Baekcheol kept screaming for help while Kim Do-hyuk just kept cursing him out. All you could hear were desperate, blood-curdling screams. Stop! Please, don't hit me! Help! Wait. Oh, drop dead. Stop hitting you? No way. I'm gonna beat you twice as hard. Look, I'm normally not the kind of guy who lets his fists do the talking. But when it comes to a punk like you who completely ruined my dream of an easy, luxurious future, you bet your life it's different. You absolute bastard. My wealth, my fame, and all that precious time I wasted training those bratty disciples of mine, getting absolutely pulverized. Baekcheol had no choice but to cover his face and take the beating like a punching bag. The moment Kim Do-hyuk paused to catch his breath, the kid scrambled to crawl away, desperately trying to squeeze in a few words. Wait. Master, aren't you even a little curious about where we are? Hearing this, Kim Do-hyuk finally paused, suddenly hit with a wave of confusion. Like, wait, where on earth am I? And what is going on here? Looking around, there was absolutely nothing but empty space. Finally getting a chance to stand up, Baekcheol explained that this was a fantasy dimension. Or, to be exact, a relic space. And the physical form of Baekcheol that Kim Do-hyuk was looking at right now? It was just a spiritual projection manifested by this fantasy realm. His actual, physical body had already vanished 3 years ago. This left Kim Do-hyuk with a massive question mark hanging over his head. Quite puzzled, Kim Do-hyuk frowned and asked, "Wait, so you're telling me you've been trapped inside this relic this entire time?" Realizing this was his moment to flex, Baek Cheol floated up into the air, looking down majestically with a smug, prideful grin on his face. "That's right, Kim Do-hyuk, your beloved disciple has actually become a constellation." "Oh. So he thought becoming a constellation made him hot stuff?" Seeing that incredibly punchable face, Kim Do-hyuk immediately reached out and beat him senseless once again. Just like that, the 30-minute time limit ran out. Though it was unclear if he had actually obtained anything useful, Kim Do-hyuk had to exit the space as required by the rules. The moment he stepped out, his teacher walked up with a dark, suspicious look on his face, immediately interrogating him. "Did you do anything weird in there?" To avoid catching any more heat, Kim Do-hyuk gave a half-hearted answer to brush him off, and quickly got the hell out of there. He had way too many bizarre things to figure out. Earlier, after beating Baek Cheol within an inch of his life, the young man had finally cooled down enough to have a civilized, polite conversation. By using his fists as a highly effective lie detector, he forced the kid to spill everything. Poor Baek Cheol was crying tears of blood, his face completely swollen from the brutal beatdown. "After you killed me, master, my soul was trapped inside this thing for 300 long years, without a single shred of power. I only got my memories back after receiving a system notification telling me to contact the reincarnated Kim Do-hyuk, and because of that, a really shady-looking guy showed up. It got me wondering, could this be the doing of that mysterious bastard who turned me into the master of the Tower of Destruction in the first place?" Kim Do-hyuk kept pressing him about the identity of the person who had turned him into the Tower Master, but it seemed even Baek Cheol was completely in the dark about it. His memories of that event had been completely wiped clean. Shifting the focus, Baek Cheol turned to ask Kim Do-hyuk what his own system notification had actually said. The young man recalled that glowing blue screen. It had instructed him to find his weapon and memories. As for the details below, they were completely unreadable, blocked out by glitched-out squares. But here was the catch. Kim Do-hyuk didn't feel like he was missing any memories at all. After all, he still remembered everything that went down in the tower. Pointing forward to emphasize his point, Baek Cheol tried to explain. "Maybe those specific memories just haven't returned to your consciousness yet, master. Since you've already found your weapon, those lost memories should start unlocking automatically." But the more his former disciple spoke, the more mind-boggling and surreal the whole thing sounded. "What weapon? I haven't found a damn thing." Seeing his master still struggling to connect the dots, Baek Cheol sighed and kept going. "Exactly. This very space is located inside the world of the 4 weapons that fuse to become the holy relic, the devouring sword. I only ended up as a constellation because I used that holy relic." Hearing this, Kim Do-hyuk felt his blood start to boil all over again. He lunged forward and gave the kid another satisfying beatdown just to vent his frustration. But by this point, Kim Do-hyuk had finally grasped the basic gist of the situation. Baek Cheol was once his disciple, but some mysterious force had corrupted him into the Tower Master. To save humanity, Kim Do-hyuk had been forced to put him down. And now, the kid had somehow returned, surviving for the last 300 years as a spiritual entity inside the devouring sword. On top of all that, his old weapon, the devouring sword, had somehow transformed into a legendary holy relic, housing an actual constellation inside it. The whole situation was so incredibly bizarre and messed up that Kim Do-hyuk seriously contemplated just smashing the sword to pieces and washing his hands of it. But even though the relic had weakened, it was still strong enough to contain Baek Cheol, the guy once feared as the legendary Destruction King. So, he figured he might as well keep it around for temporary use. He deduced that only the rightful owner of the devouring sword would be able to see the system notification window pop up. Just as his brain was about to melt from all this overwhelming information, his train of thought was abruptly shattered by a group of thugs blocking his path. A blonde punk acting like he owned the place stepped forward, cracking his knuckles menacingly as he sneered. "Hey, you're that first-place rookie from the opening ceremony, Kim Do-hyuk, right? Your senior is standing right in front of you, and you're not even gonna say hello?" This arrogant jerk was none other than Lorik Sunrise, the eldest son of the prestigious Sunrise family, and a second year at Valhalla Academy. Most rookies would probably freeze in fear before a senior, but this was Kim Do-hyuk they were dealing with. He didn't give a single damn and instantly fired back. "Senior? Do pathetic bullies like you actually have juniors who respect you?" Utterly humiliated by an underclassman, one of the hot-headed lackeys gripped his spear and stepped forward, itching to teach the kid a lesson. "Hey, rookie, Let me show you the difference between a first year and a second year. But before he could even finish his sentence, a brutal kick slammed right into his gut, sending him flying. Kim Joo-hyuk looked down at the remaining thugs with utter disdain. Sorry, but I don't do talking. I prefer action. Stop barking and just attack, you punk bastards. And just like that, without giving them a chance to strike, Kim Joo-hyuk rushed in to show them what a real beatdown looked like. One by one, they got punched and kicked, left groveling on the ground. There were still a few standing frozen like statues, and Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't about to let them leave empty-handed. He twirled the wooden sword in his hand, loving the feel of it. Come on, get over here. This is gonna be fun. If you just stand there, I'm going to crush your skull. 3 hours ago, the eldest son of the Sunrise family, Lork Sunrise, a second-year student at Valhalla Academy, was called in by Rocken Venchik, who asked him for a favor. Specifically, he wanted Lork to take care of a first-year student, and in exchange, he would get a reward that could help the Sunrise family. He agreed to let Lork use weapons, promising that he would clean up the mess afterward. With such a simple request yielding such a massive payoff, Lork agreed on the spot. He figured that even if the kid was the #1 student in the first-year class, it didn't really matter. After all, a first year was just a first year, and there was no way he could stand a chance against a second year. That was because students at Valhalla had to visit the Temple of Constellations during the second semester of their first year to sign a contract with one of the stars. Once they signed, they became contractors, allowing them to channel the power of the constellation they had bonded with. Based on his research, Lork was confident that Kim Joo-hyuk came from an ordinary background and didn't have a guardian constellation. He thought it would be an easy win and that he could easily take him down, or at least, that's what Lork had believed before arriving here. But now, he finally understood exactly what kind of monster he was dealing with. Terrified but trying to keep his cool, Lork's heart sank as he watched Kim Joo-hyuk walk toward him. What kind of bizarre swordsmanship was that? It looked like he barely put any effort into his swings, yet his opponents were hit with devastating force. Countless questions rushed through his mind, but his pride wouldn't let him back down, so he forced himself to act tough. Meanwhile, his lackeys stood frozen in the back, hesitating on whether they should charge or run. Refusing to suffer a humiliating defeat, Lork threw caution to the wind and screamed at his underlings to attack. What are you scared of, you bastards? He's just a first year. He talked a big game, but deep down, his limbs were shaking with absolute terror. Kim Joo-hyuk stood there, resting his sword on his shoulder, enjoying the show. Watching them try to talk their way out of this, he sneered in mockery. Well, look at the brave boss. Anyone who stands still gets hit first. And right after saying that, he instantly closed the gap, shoved the wooden sword into his stomach, and delivered a powerful strike. The result? Lork blacked out right then and there. What a pathetic joke, talking all that trash only to get instantly wrecked. After waiting around for the bastard to wake up with no success, Kim Joo-hyuk decided to apply some physical force to that pretty face of his to wake him up. Wake up! Hey kid, who the hell are you? Why did you bring a whole mob to jump me? Despite being beaten to a pulp, Lork clenched his teeth and refused to say a single word. Not wanting to waste any more time, Kim Joo-hyuk ignored them and warned them to clean up their mess before he walked away. Seething with rage, Lork tried to shout after him to salvage whatever dignity he had left. You think you can just go to school like normal after doing this? Even if you're the top-ranking first year, you'll be expelled if everyone finds out about this. It seemed like this guy didn't have a single brain cell. He was clearly the one who started it. Yet here he was playing the victim. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to just walk away, but he had to stop and knock some sense into him. Whatever, but you do realize what people will say if you run your mouth about today, right? A bunch of second years came to jump a single first year, only to end up getting absolutely trashed. If you tell anyone, won't you be too embarrassed to even show your face at school? Think about it very carefully. If you still want to go to school and join a guild, you'd better keep your mouth shut. Meanwhile, back in the dorms, Rocken was eagerly waiting for news that his enemy had been beaten to a pulp. Right on cue, Lork called. Rocken expected good news, but what he heard was the exact opposite. I'm not getting involved in this anymore. Rocken desperately tried to push, urging his senior to report the beating to the academy admin. He promised to pay him handsomely if he did, and even offered to send money to his family. But to guys who play the tough boss, money isn't everything. They still have their pride. So the answer was a flat-out no. Enraged, Rocken slammed his brand-new smartphone onto the ground, shattering it to pieces. He turned to Juji standing behind him, his eyes bloodshot with fury. You contacted Jazera, right? Where the hell is he? Seemingly used to these outbursts, she calmly replied, "Yes, I have informed him that you wish to meet, but since he is far away, it will take some time for him to get here." Over in Mexico, at Valhalla Academy, Vench was a notorious thug who specialized in bullying others. He received a message from Rocken, asking him to come to South Korea and take care of someone named Kim Joo-hyuk, with a generous reward already prepared for him. The moment he got the news, he was thrilled, a sinister grin instantly spreading across his face. The next day at 6 a.m. in the Valhalla training room, Kim Joo-hyuk brought his gear along for his first workout session. Just as he was excitedly getting ready to do some basic warm-ups, a sudden voice called out, making him jump. "Why are you here, instructor?" Kim Joo-hyuk broke into a cold sweat. Cold sweat dripping down, he snapped back. "What? Who is that? Visago, where the heck are you talking to me from?" Ah, turns out his little lackey was hiding inside the sealed sword. Kim Joo-hyuk, absolutely ticked off, gives him a piece of his mind. "I am shocked you managed to sneak out of there. Maybe I should beat you to a pulp and lock you right back in." Shaking in his boots before his master, Visago quickly promises he won't cause any trouble, revealing he left a duplicate of the sword back there. This copy-making ability actually piques Kim Joo-hyuk's curiosity. Visago explains that ever since he woke up, he lost all his powers, but got this special ability in return. Honestly, even he has no clue why he has it. While they are lost in thought, Arin suddenly shows up. After all, she is here for the swordsmanship lesson Kim Joo-hyuk promised her, but our boy tells her they are not starting that just yet. The most important thing first is to build up her stamina, and we are starting with step number 1, the warm-up. He explains that by improving her physical strength, her body will absorb much more mana, making it way easier to control at will. To Kim Joo-hyuk, the way kids train these days is just downright bizarre. They focus entirely on mana control before even building up their stamina or basic physical conditioning, and Arin is no exception. She might have a massive pool of mana, but her actual skills are barely better than a rookie holding a toy sword. So, like a true drill sergeant, Kim Joo-hyuk kicks off their training days, where it is less talk and way more action. That very morning, Kim Joo-hyuk's class has a quick pop quiz on otherworldly monsters, overseen by Valhalla's senior instructor, Lilia. She had already told them to self-study and research monsters beforehand. Now, it is time to put their knowledge to the test on how to deal with each type of beast. Everyone quickly scribbles down their answers and finishes the test. Even though today's test won't affect their final grade, it still determines whether they can advance to the next class. This has everyone pretty stressed out. Well, everyone except Kim Joo-hyuk, who is doing something so wild that even Visago gasps in shock. Master, are you sure you can write that as an answer?" Meanwhile, in the first-year teacher's lounge, the instructor is grading the tests, looking pretty satisfied. Lilia confidently brags to Mr. Kim Lee-gun that, as expected, the kids from the 5 great clans did an outstanding job. But that was just 1 second before disaster strikes. Before the male teacher can even swallow his coffee, he does a hilarious double take and spits it all out. Kim Joo-hyuk, does he seriously expect me to accept this trash as an answer? Furious, she crumbles his test paper and rants to Kim Lee-gun. He did not just slack off, he is making a mockery of my entire class. I cannot let this slide. Next class, I am going to rub this test in his face and teach him a lesson he won't forget. Oh boy, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and she is about to make his life a living nightmare. 1 week later, in the combat simulation room, Lilia calls Kim Joo-hyuk up to grill him. She shoves his test with a giant 0 written on it right in his face and asks if he actually took it seriously. Kim Joo-hyuk is utterly clueless, wondering in his head if this lady has lost her absolute mind. He flatly replies that yes, he was dead serious. Gritting her teeth, the instructor tries to keep her composure. First question, what is the best way to deal with a stone golem? How did you answer that? Keeping his signature blank face, Kim Joo-hyuk shrugs. Stab it in the stomach. She glares at him. And the second question, if 8 goblins rush at you in the forest, write down your course of action. Kim Joo-hyuk doesn't even hesitate, picking up the test paper and reading it out loud. Starting with the first one charging in, you stab them one by one and send them straight to hell. The instructor is absolutely fuming, but she's got a backup plan. After bickering back and forth, she gets so incredibly frustrated that she decides to give Kim Joo-hyuk one chance to put his money where his mouth is. If you can take down this monster exactly how you wrote in your test, I will give you a passing grade. She expects the kid to chicken out and beg for mercy. But nope. Kim Joo-hyuk strolls right over to the weapon rack, grabs a random sword, and casually walks up to the stone golem. The beast raises its heavy arm to strike, but within a split second, it lets out a painful roar. The sword is already driven deep into its core, and within seconds, the stone golem completely disintegrates. Kim Joo-hyuk turns back to the jaw-dropped crowd with a deadpan expression. See? Just stab it in the gut. Easy. The other students freeze in absolute shock, wondering how on earth he just took down a stone golem with a basic sword and zero magic. Witnessing this absolute madness, the instructor's smug attitude vanishes instantly. She asks him in a shaky voice how he even pulled that off. Kim Joo-hyuk just stares at her like she has 3 heads. Didn't you just watch me do it? You just thrust the blade right into its core. That is it. Hearing an answer that basically calls her blind, Lilia is way too baffled to even feel insulted. Biting her nails, a dozen wild thoughts run through her mind. To pierce a stone golem's defense with a physical blade, you would need an A-rank weapon at the very least. So usually, it only makes sense if you shatter it with a high-grade weapon. But he just did it with a standard practice sword? If she thought she could let him off the hook now, she was wrong. The instructor still wants to test his second answer, so she immediately warps Kim Joo-hyuk into a completely different simulation. Before he can even take in his surroundings, a pack of green goblins, or, well, let's just call them goblins, charge straight at him. A pack of berserk goblins suddenly appeared right in front of him. Taking these guys down wasn't going to be a walk in the park. If he didn't play his cards right, the ones in front would use their war cry skill, alerting every other goblin to swarm him all at once. Normally, powerful mages would wipe them out in a single shot, or anyone else would run as far away as possible instead of facing them. But that's for normal people. For Kim Joo-hyuk, absolutely not. He didn't care how many there were, or how they fought. He just gripped his sword and charged right at the first one. A brutal downward strike pierced straight through the first one's head. As the second beast roared, it immediately took a sword right to the throat, and one by one, they all met their miserable ends. Kim Joo-hyuk turned to the teacher and asked with complete confidence, "I got the second question right too, didn't I?" This completely shut the teacher up, leaving her too stunned to utter another word. The next day, just like always, Kim Joo-hyuk dragged Aaron back to the training room. She tried her absolute best to keep up with the physical training, but she just couldn't do it, ending up collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Amused, Kim Joo-hyuk asked her, "Don't you usually train? Why are you gasping for air like a dying dog? How are you going to fight monsters like this?" Exhausted, Arin tried to explain that she could just use magic by borrowing power from her guardian constellations. Just as Kim Joo-hyuk expected, instead of building physical strength, people had solely focused on magic ever since they started relying on the constellations, completely ignoring physical combat. Sure, that works fine as long as they can borrow enough power, but the risk is way too high if they ever get stuck in a magic-nullifying dungeon. What happens if a battle drags on and they run out of mana? Or worse, what if their guardian constellations refuse to grant them power? There were just too many variables. Kim Joo-hyuk let Arin take a break while he went in for another round of training. Once the beauty had left, Barche finally mustered the courage to ask his master why on earth he was helping her train like that. Well, as it turned out, she had just been nagging him so much that it gave him a massive headache, so Kim Joo-hyuk only agreed to get her off his back. While they were chatting, he glanced over and saw Se-hyuk, the muscle-obsessed fanatic, training hard nearby, having already put in a solid workout. Watching Se-hyuk's retreating back, Kim Joo-hyuk silently noted that the guy was a lot smarter than those fools who only relied on magic. With that out of the way, he wondered what those mysterious constellations were actually up to. Barch could only shrug, having no clue himself. Terrified of getting punched, his subordinate quickly chimed in, "What if we complete the new quest on the system? Maybe we'll learn more about the constellations that way." That reminded him, so Kim Joo-hyuk quickly pulled up his system window to check. It stated that he needed to head to the Great Forest of Valhalla, Myrona's home, to complete the quest. The name sounded familiar, even though it was his first time seeing it. The Great Forest was where the final trial of the first semester would take place. If it weren't for this quest, Kim Joo-hyuk would have run over there as soon as he got his strength back. But now, it looked like he just had to hold out until then. Either way, he realized that until he completed the quest, he couldn't afford to get expelled from the academy. He had to keep his secret safe. Meanwhile, over in London, England, at the Bentrick family estate, the vice head of the family, Adelia, sat regally in her chair, listening to her subordinate report that Logan had summoned Jero to South Korea. Just hearing those names gave her a massive headache. Jero Bentrick, the family's biggest troublemaker. He had used the Bentrick name to cause countless scandals. At the age of 19, he had even taken 5 lives. They were students of the British Academy, and he killed them over a mere argument. So, at the age of 20, his name was completely erased from the family register. After years of living in hiding, he was now on his way to meet Logan. Sensing trouble was brewing, Adelia immediately ordered her men to keep a close eye on him. Monitor him before it's too late. On top of that, she didn't forget to send a message to Aaron. If I catch him doing anything shady, he's getting kicked out of the family. Adelia absolutely loathed freeloaders. They all enjoyed the family's power without putting in any effort. And that kind of privilege didn't belong to trash like them. No, all of it would belong to her alone. The next day, even though class was in session, Kim Joo-hyuk's mind was drifting elsewhere. While he was lost in thought, the girl sitting in front of him suddenly gestured and slipped him a small note. As soon as he read it, his expression went cold, and his attitude shifted instantly. It turned out that the students were allowed to go off campus this week. The moment class ended, Kim Joo-hyuk quickly filled out his leave request. Meanwhile, Yoo So-yeon had been tagging along behind him the entire time. She kept stuttering, unable to squeeze out a single word, which was starting to annoy him. Even though he had politely replied to her note, her lack of response had already ticked him off. And now, she was just standing there, rambling about nonsense that made no sense. Honestly, Yoo So-yeon just wanted to ask Kim Joo-hyuk how he managed to pierce through that stone demon so easily. But before the words could leave her mouth, she hesitated, feeling like asking would completely crush her own pride. But before she could even finish, the teacher suddenly barged in and cut her off, demanding, "How did you manage to kill that stone goblin?" Completely stealing her spotlight. Talk about annoying. On top of that, the professor even tried to recruit Kim Joo-hyuk as her assistant, promising him tons of special perks, especially the chance to research various ways to take down monsters. Watching the two of them walk away, Jusin could only cry silently, realizing it was best not to ask anymore. The next day, just as he had researched beforehand, Kim Joo-hyuk packed up his stash of valuable loot and headed to a night market to sell it off. He chose the night market because he wanted to keep his identity hidden, and it was a place where similar items were regularly traded. The only reason this illegal black market could even exist was because its creator was a guardian constellation known as the Concealed Overlord. Since it was established and actively maintained by a constellation, high-level players frequented the place without even trying to hide it. Even though it was illegal, the government did not show any signs of wanting to shut it down. This made it easy for him to figure out a way to get inside. Following the online instructions to a T, Kim Joo-hyuk arrived there in no time. Looking at his surroundings, he felt a strange sense of both unfamiliarity and nostalgia. With its purple sky and cloudy moonlight, it looked exactly like the night sky he had seen 300 years ago. Putting the scenery aside for a moment, Kim Joo-hyuk spotted the staff member he had read about in that online post. After pulling out a stack of 2 million won to pay the entry fee, he was immediately welcomed like a VIP. The staff member gave him a mask and pointed him toward the most reputable trader. Following the directions, Kim Joo-hyuk soon found himself standing before Morris, the man known for offering the absolute best prices. Wasting no time, Kim Joo-hyuk immediately pulled out a pouch packed with precious rings. Expecting some cheap junk, Morris was pretty dismissive at first, but the moment he picked one up to inspect it, he jumped in shock. "I have examined all sorts of things, but this is an artifact from the era of destruction. Are the others the same? They are all from the exact same period. Where on earth did this kid get so many ancient artifacts?" Intrigued, Morris asked him where he found them. But since the golden rule of the market was to never pry into anyone's personal business, Kim Joo-hyuk obviously kept his mouth shut. Instead, he urged the man to finish the appraisal quickly and name his price. Morris stroked his chin, lost in thought for a moment, before admitting that he honestly did not know. He could not properly appraise them because these relics were from the era of destruction, and besides, he did not even have enough capital to buy them. Kim Joo-hyuk was quite surprised, and pressed him to find out where he could actually sell this hoard. Morris pointed toward a tall tower in the distance, where the auction house was located. However, he warned that it usually takes 2 to 3 weeks just to get a slot because of the massive backlog, and he would have to return later to verify and collect his payment. That sounds way too complicated. Even if it meant making more money, Kim Joo-hyuk was not happy about the hassle, so he asked the old man if he could just make him an offer anyway. Morris typed a number onto his calculator. There were so many zeros that our protagonist could not even count them all. Even though he had kept them because he knew they were valuable in his past life, Kim Joo-hyuk never expected them to be worth this much cash. Morris admitted that even if he liquidated his entire net worth, it would only cover 3/4 of the total value of this haul. Since he did not want any hassle, Kim Joo-hyuk simply agreed to sell them for that amount on the spot, leaving Morris completely dumbfounded. Artifacts from the era of destruction fetched astronomical prices not just because of their age, but also because of a much bigger reason: the constellations. The constellations, which began appearing after the era ended, reacted strangely to relics from that time. Rumor has it that even an ordinary person could form a contract with a constellation using one of these artifacts. Morris examined the rings meticulously. Threads of mana still flowed through the intricate designs, and the magic radiating from the items was practically humming. He felt incredibly lucky to have secured such an absolute steal for what felt like pocket change. Just then, someone suddenly appeared, catching Morris completely off guard. Since Morris had registered the items anonymously for auction, the market's owner, Brackett, came over in person to greet him. Glancing at the items in Morris's hands, Brackett could not help but gasp in shock. "It seems my guardian constellation is practically begging for this ring." After wrapping up the deal, Kim Joo-hyuk quickly made his exit, grinning from ear to ear as he stared at his newly loaded bank account. He would not have to worry about money ever again. If he ever ran low, he could just grab more from his stash of relics. After all, he still had tons of them left. Right then, his phone started ringing off the hook. The moment he answered, a voice started blabbing so fast he could not even get a word in. Turns out it was Professor Lilia inviting him to lunch. Since he was already starving and loved free food, there was no way he would pass this up. But as the saying goes, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Throughout the meal, the professor kept nagging him to become her teaching assistant, sweetening the deal with a bunch of benefits, promising things like a scholarship, a generous stipend, the chance to co-author a thesis with her, and even a fast track to being recognized by the Monster Research Association. Fame and fortune would surely follow, and all that jazz. Best of all, he would get off-campus passes twice a week instead of just once a month. All this endless yapping was giving him a massive headache, especially since none of these perks actually appealed to him. What he actually needed right now was to get to the Great Forest's Eye, which he could only access during the first-year final evaluation exam. Even as his instructor, she would not be able to pull any strings for that. Kim Joo-hyuk flatly rejected her, telling her straight up that he would not be her assistant or write any papers with her, so she should stop getting her hopes up. She lost this round, but she was not about to give up just yet. Other things. Lilia offered to share the information if he'd just reveal a bit about how to target different types of monsters. Kim Joo-hyuk was pretty curious and asked what kind of intel she had. He thought it'd be something good, but it turned out to be just some gossip about Choi Arin, which didn't interest him in the slightest. Once he'd had his fill of food and drinks, Kim Joo-hyuk stood straight up and got his butt out of there. Before leaving, he got a bit curious and asked the instructor why she had to be so hard on her students. They were still just kids, yet her training was incredibly strict. As if he'd hit a nerve, Lilia launched into a long-winded explanation. But to put it simply, she believed that as an instructor of mythical monsters, it would be unacceptable not to give it her all. Ultimately, monster attacks directly impact the students' survival rates. Since the students couldn't even remember the basic attack patterns, she had no choice but to be tough on them. After hearing her out, Kim Joo-hyuk dropped a brutally honest truth bomb. He told her that was just her personal ego talking, before waving goodbye and walking away. Meanwhile, over at the Choi Jin family private estate in Soyang, the head of the Choi Jin family, Choi Jun-seo, summoned his eldest son, Choi Jin-gon, and his second daughter, Choi Arin, to ask about their plans before taking the upcoming placement test. If they passed the test, they would have a chance to form a contract through their family relic, the Sword King saber. It was a crucial ritual to become the successor of the family. However, if they failed, they would be disowned and erased from the family tree. As he spoke, he unsheathed the sword, glaring at them with a stern expression. "So, are you going to participate?" Both of them felt a bit intimidated, but since their father was the one asking, they both agreed. The placement test was scheduled in 3 weeks, giving them plenty of time to prepare. On the way back, Choi Jin-gon, who clearly despised Arin, began to insult, belittle, and challenge her. He sneered, "So you're actually going to take the placement test? Didn't you see father's face? You really think you have what it takes to become the head of the family?" Look at you, you worthless bastard. You're making me laugh. Don't flatter yourself thinking you'll win. You can't even receive a blessing from a constellation, can you? How are you going to beat me when I already have a contract? What's wrong? Ready to give up already? If not, keep leeching off the family's money while you can, because I'm going to make you pay back every single cent, my dear little sister. A few days later, time was flying by, and midterms were just around the corner. While the homeroom teacher stood at the blackboard, droning on and on about the rules and punishments for failing the exam, Kim Joo-hyuk didn't absorb a single word. Instead, his mind wandered to distant thoughts. Every single exam at Valhalla held massive weight. For both midterms and finals, getting a low score meant getting expelled on the spot. So, even Kim Joo-hyuk was feeling a little bit stressed. The practical exam was a total breeze, but the written test was another story. He needed to stay enrolled in this academy until the end of the term to get into the Great Forest, but he still had no idea how to make that happen. Then, out of nowhere, a brilliant idea struck him. He instinctively called out to Park Cheol, "Hey, you've attended almost every lecture, right? How about you take the test for me?" Park Cheol immediately shut him down, feeling like it was completely unfair. But rejecting him wasn't going to save him. After a few threats from Kim Joo-hyuk, the poor guy had no choice but to agree with both hands and feet. Once class let out, Erin, who had packed her things ages ago, shyly walked over and asked Kim Joo-hyuk about their training session. It was perfect timing, since he also needed to practice with weapons anyway, so he decided to teach her a thing or two about swordsmanship. Calling it sword training might sound fancy, but it was really just learning the basic grip, which is a fundamental move every swordsman must master. According to Erin, it had been quite a while since she last held her sword, as she had been focused entirely on physical training with Kim Joo-hyuk, even though she usually practiced all the time. Kim Joo-hyuk asked her to draw her sword, but her posture was totally off. He began teaching her step by step, showing her how to put pressure on her ring and pinky fingers while firmly gripping the hilt. Erin immediately felt the difference. Even without channeling any mana into the blade, her grip felt far more secure and stable than using both hands normally. "Come at me! Show me everything you've got with that sword." Kim Joo-hyuk waited for her to showcase her true strength. Erin's movement speed had increased dramatically, thanks to the brutal, bone-breaking physical training sessions she'd endured. Kim Joo-hyuk kept instructing her on attacking footwork, how to channel her weight, and so on. And just as expected, Erin was now on a whole different level of strength. She silently thanked Kim Joo-hyuk for all his help recently. An hour later, both of them were thoroughly exhausted. Kim Joo-hyuk called it a day, telling her that was enough for now. Exhausted, Erin slumped onto the ground, looking up at Kim Joo-hyuk as a sudden thought crossed her mind. She asked if he would train with her again next time. Kim Joo-hyuk thought it over. Sparring with Choi Erin would definitely teach him a lot, plus training someone as gifted as her was actually pretty fun. Ever since the opening ceremony, he'd sensed that her sword technique was incredibly unique. Even though she used a breathing technique, it felt completely different. Thanks to her extraordinary talent for the sword, he was slowly regaining his own battle senses. If this were 3 years ago, she would have been an invaluable talent, worthy of being his disciple. But unfortunately, that was then, and he no longer had that kind of freedom. Finding it pretty fun to tease her, Kim Joo-hyuk told her he didn't want to fight anymore. He expected Choi Erin to whine and beg, but she simply said she understood, leaving him a bit thrown off. Choi Erin replied that since he was always right, she would listen to whatever he said. 2 weeks later, at the Valhalla Stadium, all the first-year students were gathered. Everyone knew the reason, except for one person. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered why on earth he had to be here. Standing and waiting in boredom, sighing in frustration, he realized their homeroom teacher had actually mentioned this 2 weeks ago. If he could, he would have punched that old teacher a few times by now. Not making anyone wait any longer, the head coach and the instructors stepped out. They began explaining the rules of Valhalla's midterm exam. This time, the practical midterm assessment would be a dungeon raid. You will form teams and enter an artificial dungeon, and you can join whoever you want. I believe the ideal team size is 8 members, but you are free to decide whether to add or remove members from your team. The Academy will evaluate you based solely on your level of contribution during the dungeon raid, and the time limit is 5 hours. If you cannot pass the test within the given time, you will be disqualified. The dungeon difficulty level is F. Now, let the exam begin. The moment those words were spoken, the students started scrambling in a panic to form their teams. The kids from the 5 great families probably already grasped the core of the exam. As for the rest of the students, some of them formed groups. Some had 20 people, while others went in groups of 8. If they aren't balanced well, fights will definitely break out. The moment a student steps into the dungeon, their score starts ticking. However, there are always exceptions. While everyone else chose to form parties, Kim Joo-hyuk decided to go in completely alone. At this point, this was child's play for him. But he wasn't the only outlier. Kim Joo-hyuk was quite surprised to see that Choi Arin still hadn't entered yet. She was still standing right there. Oh right, she had said she would follow his lead from now on. Since he was going in alone, she was going to do the exact same thing. Others saw her and tried to invite her to join them, but Choi Arin coldly rejected them, saying, "Sorry, I'm going in alone. I can do it." Kim Joo-hyuk also said it's not that hard. Inside the Valhalla control room, the examiners were watching and grading the exam. The grading was extremely strict. The scores seemed quite low because the head combat coach, Lee Sang-chun, was the chief examiner. Back in his youth, he was known as the Dungeon Master, a legend with a 99% dungeon clear rate. Because of that, he understood the core of dungeon rating better than anyone else. That was why Lee Sang-chun gave out such harsh scores. Taking a look over the monitors, the old man seemed quite pleased. This year had a decent amount of talent, especially Joo Se-hyuk. He had excellent combat skills, executing everything right out of the textbook, and knew how to handle situations brilliantly. He positioned his team members perfectly, and commanded their movements to rack up points. And above all, he coordinated with his team members mid-battle to ensure they would successfully clear this dungeon. In any case, Joo Se-hyuk did a great job. It's just that he had to run into Kim Joo-hyuk this year, completely overshadowing his record. Speaking of Kim Joo-hyuk, the instructor decided to search for his name. But what the hell? Strangely enough, his name was nowhere to be found. Lee Sang-chun wondered if the machine was broken. Wasn't it supposed to display the information of all students who entered the dungeon? Just thinking about it felt wrong. The instructor opened the list of students who had already completed the raid. Oh, so he was right here, as expected. Kim Joo-hyuk's name was staring right back at him. The instructor was utterly speechless. No freaking way did he just play solo and clear the dungeon in just 23 minutes and 32 seconds. This was absolutely unprecedented in the history of Valhalla. The instructor couldn't believe it, so he had to play back the recorded footage to check. 1, 2, and then a whole swarm of monsters were sliced down by Kim Joo-hyuk without him missing a single strike. After clearing out the goblins, he moved on to the orcs, hacking and slashing through them effortlessly. Within just a few minutes, he was already standing right in front of the boss. It was a golem, specially created for the midterm exam. But Kim Joo-hyuk took it down with a single, swift strike. His stats looked as if 8 people's power had been combined. Watching this unfold, Lee Sang-chun let out a helpless laugh. It seemed like the top spot for this exam already belonged to Kim Joo-hyuk. The test quickly came to an end, leaving some students cheering while others were practically limping on crutches. Staring at the results board, the homeroom teacher was completely speechless. Seeing this, the head coach explained, "I figured he would take first place, but I never expected him to clear the dungeon all on his own, without a single scratch. If he keeps growing like this and stays on this path, South Korea might just reclaim the title of the only one." That was the title reserved for the strongest contractor. Hearing this, Kim Lee-gun stammered in shock as he asked for clarification. Realizing he might have spoken too hastily, the head coach merely brushed it off with a casual response. "Perhaps because we haven't seen a true genius in so long, I got a bit too excited and spoke out of turn." But that's not even the most surprising part. The name sitting at number 2, Choi Arin, was what shocked them the most. Lee Sang-chun never imagined she would play solo, but the proof was right in front of them. Even though it took her some time and she ended up pretty banged up, she still finished it. Curious, he asked the homeroom teacher about it. If this test had been about teamwork, Yoo So-yeon definitely would have gotten a higher grade. But Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Arin got higher scores because of their contributions. The results are final, so there's no point in discussing it any further. Even though the teacher said that, Kim Lee-gun still had his doubts. He had met her back when they were in the Chojin Association. Arin was always a model student who did nothing but practice swordsmanship, but now she suddenly had the crazy idea to clear a dungeon all by herself. That was insane. For a split second, he wondered if Kim Joo-hyuk had put her up to it, but he immediately shook off such a ridiculous thought. The next day, just as expected, the rankings left everyone completely shocked. Staring at Kim Joo-hyuk's name sitting right at the top of the board made Rockdil Ventric boil with rage. He turned to his assistant and asked, "Is Dzera in Korea right now? Call him immediately." Yuria knew he was just venting his frustration, but as a mere errand girl, she had no choice but to do as she was told. Later that day, at a restaurant in Jamsil, Rockdill rushed out to meet Desera. As soon as they met, the scarred thug waved to greet him. Then, he cut a piece of steak and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing greedily. With his mouth full, Desera asked, "So, the guy you want me to take care of is Kim Joo-hyuk? What's his deal?" Having waited forever to speak, Rockdill blurted out, "He's an eyesore because of his lowly background. Send him back to where he belongs." "Oh, so he's just some elitist who thinks he's above everyone else," Desera thought, trying to bite off the rest of his steak. He looked up and asked, "Can I just kill him?" Rockdill casually nodded and said it was up to him. Then, Desera pointed a finger at Yuria. He casually mentioned that he had just killed one of her family members just for talking too much, making her shake like a leaf. With that, he let out a savage laugh and told Rockdill he'd better get his payment ready. A week passed in a flash. Since he topped the exam, Kim Joo-hyuk was allowed to go out for a bit, but Mr. Park wouldn't stop nagging him about it. "Didn't you already go out once today?" Not wanting to waste his breath arguing with this chatterbox, Kim Joo-hyuk cut straight to the point. He needed to retrieve some records in Suwon. Grabbing his bag and opening Google Maps, he wandered up a hill. Just as he was about to sit down, enjoy the view, and have some tea and snacks, some random guy decided to crash his peaceful moment. Kim Joo-hyuk stopped in his tracks and asked the man, "Who are you, where are you from, and what the hell are you doing here?" Desera obviously didn't answer. He ignored the question and started rambling to himself. "Aren't you curious why I was the one who found you instead of someone else?" Of course, Kim Joo-hyuk knew. He used to be the Sword King, not some idiot. "You mean, once you're done here, you'll leave this place like nothing ever happened." Spot on. It was like two old rivals reading each other's minds, and they both immediately got into fighting stances. They lunged at each other. Kim Joo-hyuk dropped his backpack with a heavy thud as Desera threw a vicious punch. Just as the fist was about to graze his cheek, Kim Joo-hyuk slipped the blow, sending the punch straight into a tree and snapping it clean in half. Desera grinned with excitement, turning to threaten his opponent. "Oh, you're pretty lucky. You actually dodged that. If you hadn't, you know exactly what would have happened to you, right?" Kim Joo-hyuk just let out a bored smirk. Then he fired back. "Lucky? No, I dodged because you're way too slow." He glanced over at the shattered tree. He wasn't stupid enough to miss the fact that this guy was incredibly strong. Honestly, this bastard might even be as strong as, or stronger than, Se-hyuk. Kim Joo-hyuk realized the guy was too dangerous to fight head-on. In his current weak body, he wouldn't survive another hit. So, out of the 36 strategies, running was his best option. Refusing to let his prey escape, Desera eagerly gave chase. He thought it would be an easy catch, but out of nowhere, Kim Joo-hyuk whipped around and planted a solid punch right on his face, sending him sprawling onto the dirt. When you've got your enemy down, you don't give them a chance to breathe. With a sinister smirk, Kim Joo-hyuk raised his foot and stomped down hard right on his face. By a stroke of pure luck, Desera managed to roll out of the way just in the nick of time. Otherwise, he would have needed major reconstructive surgery. Furious, he scrambled to his feet, wiped the blood from his nose, and growled through gritted teeth, "You bastard. I have to admit, that actually surprised me." Kim Joo-hyuk didn't miss a beat and replied, "Well, you must already know that I am the top-ranked fighter in Valhalla." Desera fell silent. He knew that, but what he couldn't wrap his head around was what kind of potion this guy had taken to become so ridiculously strong. Members of the Ventric family used their bloodline talent to boost their combat stats. Even if they were weak, their family talent gave them an innate ability for potion crafting, which Desera could easily exploit. He could utilize any potion given to him. His parents had forced him to drink hundreds of thousands of enhancement potions. Because of that, he was already stronger than an average adult by the age of 16. His parents wanted to use him to gain recognition from the clan, but once he grew strong enough to stand on his own, Desera refused to live under their thumb for the rest of his life. So, he put his parents out of their misery. Afterward, he was banished from the family by the self-proclaimed head, but Desera didn't care. In this dark, twisted world, none of that mattered. Up until now, whenever he took on a job, almost any problem could be solved with money, and he became even more reckless after cutting ties with his family. When he received the request from Robin, he was offered cash, but after a second thought, he found himself way more interested in Kim Joo-hyuk, so he decided to just take his life instead. He wondered how much fun it would be to play with the guy who ranked first in the entrance exam and who was also called a madman for throwing insults to weed out all the association spies. But now, standing right in front of Kim Joo-hyuk, another question crossed his mind. Who on earth is this guy? Jazera stayed quiet for a few seconds before suddenly blabbing out, "Hey, what kind of drugs are you using to get this strong? I do not think it is some cheap junk that an orphan like you could ever afford." Hearing this, Kim Joo-hyuk burst out laughing. He laughed so hard he had to hold his stomach for a good while before replying, "Drugs? Ha ha ha, you total psycho. What the hell are you talking about? So you are actually a juiced-up musclehead?" Feeling utterly insulted, Jazera still stubbornly pressed on. "Are you really saying you did not use any drugs to get this strong?" The more Kim Joo-hyuk listened to this junkie babble, the more hyped up he got to just jump him and throw hands. Cracking his neck and shoulders, he fired back. "Of course not, you moron. I got strong through blood, sweat, and hard work. In a way, I could compare you to a dog. But actually, that is pretty disrespectful to a dog with natural muscles to compare it to a piece of trash like you. Getting roasted out of nowhere." Hisara was absolutely fuming. Whipping out his weapon, he cursed under his breath, "You son of a bitch, you are dead." But it seemed like his drug-addled brain was making him delusional. He barely managed to draw his knife, channeling his magic power, and was about to say something cool, but before he could even open his mouth, he took a brutal hit straight to the head. "You think I am just going to let you walk away that easily, huh? Are you brain dead?" What kind of moron actually waits for his opponent to power up? As he beat him half to death, he kept roasting him non-stop. Talk about a legendary mouth, 10 out of 10, no notes. Jazera desperately reached out his hand, begging for mercy and trying to surrender. But he was not getting off that easy. Kim Joo-hyuk got right in his face, grabbing him by the hair with a savage grin. "You cannot pass out just yet, you stupid, brain-fried junkie. I was actually going to let you go, but you just had to keep asking for a beatdown. Since you said you were going to take care of me, there is no way I am letting you leave. I am going to ask you a few questions, so you better grit your teeth." Staring at the massive fist right in front of his face, Jazera felt his blood run cold. Pale as a ghost, he screamed out in sheer terror. Talk about playing with fire and getting burned. A pathetic puddle trying to clash with the ocean? Keep dreaming, buddy. Meanwhile, over at the Valhalla dormitory, Robin was anxiously waiting for good news from his senior. He was absolutely convinced that Kim Joo-hyuk was a goner by now, completely clueless that the one who actually needed a coffin was Hisara. Thrilled, Robin called Julia to get the car ready so they could go clean up the body. Right on cue, his phone rang with Jazera's caller ID. Robin quickly snatched it, answering with excitement, "Yeah, bro. Did you take care of him yet?" But there was only silence on the other end, followed by painful groans, and then, a very familiar voice cut through. "I bet you have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on right now, do you? I wonder what kind of look you have on your face right now. Here, let me translate what your buddy is trying to say. If I die, please light 2 sticks of incense for me. Just wait for me, Robin Ventrick." Hearing that, Robin's face went completely pale, and he slammed the phone down immediately before Kim Joo-hyuk could say another word. Now, fear finally crept in. He was terrified of his actions being exposed, and even more terrified of the instant karma coming his way. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before the news reached the Ventrick family. Robin clutched his head in silence, his mind already racing to plot another way to finish off Kim Joo-hyuk. He reassured himself that Kim was just a low-class commoner, so nothing serious could happen to him as long as he kept his head down and lay low for a while. Meanwhile, after dealing with that blockhead, the two of them picked up their backpacks and continued their search for the ruins. The more Bakro thought about it, the more confused he got, so he asked, "Did that guy you just beat up forget to bring his brain? Why did you not just kill him on the spot?" Exhausted by his talkative disciple, Kim Joo-hyuk finally broke his silence to explain. "If this were the old me, his head would be rolling on the floor by now, but right now, I am just a regular high school student. That actually makes sense." Bakro stroked his chin, adding, "But by the way, there is something that has been bugging me. I am talking about that magic power the guy was giving off. It felt strangely familiar. If he had unleashed a bit more, I would have been able to verify it for sure, but I have definitely run into this before. Did you not feel anything at all, Master? Oh, so that was magic?" Kim Joo-hyuk could care less. Since he was never a demon himself, he decided to just brush it off. Going back to when Jazera confessed after getting a few of his fingers broken, Kim Joo-hyuk had looked down at him and whispered, "Hey, who sent you after me?" "Oh, right. I broke your jaw, did I not?" With that, he reached his hand into the guy's mouth and snapped it back into place with a loud crack. Now that your jaw is back in place, you can finally speak. Jazera tried to play tough, but after watching his fingers get snapped one by one, he finally broke down and confessed, "Robin Ventrix sent me. I am Jazera of the first class. I took on the job as a mercenary." According to him, the constellations were the first race to worship the jade-faced blade, and he actually had a contract with one of them. Jazera confidently bragged that if he had just 30 more seconds to charge up his power, the outcome of the battle would have been totally different. Hearing this guy talk absolute garbage was giving Kim Joo-hyuk a massive headache. He had actually planned to let him off easy if he showed some real remorse. But Kim Joo-hyuk had to think twice. "You better keep your mouth shut," he growled, before snapping the guy's jaw right back into place. The first kind was a name that sounded somewhat familiar, so Kim Do-hyuk went online to search for it. A ton of trending news popped up, and almost none of it was good. Kim Do-hyuk got so annoyed that he completely gave up on looking for notes and decided to just go settle the score with that bastard Rockdill. To teach this scumbag a lesson, he came up with a pretty wild idea. In this day and age, you gotta use high technology, not just raw power. Luckily, he had recorded Jazera's entire confession, so now all he had to do was find a place to upload it. Talk about an easy win. Did these punks seriously think they could mess with him and get away with it? Kim Do-hyuk immediately called Lilia to ask for her help. Thinking he was calling to apply as her assistant, she was absolutely thrilled and answered in a heartbeat. "That's not why I'm calling. Do you happen to know any reporters?" Kim Do-hyuk replied instantly, cutting her thoughts short. The very next day, news about the Ventrix family plotting to murder a student at Valhalla quickly shot to the top of the trending search list. The story had been heavily exaggerated, but long story short, it put a massive target right on the Ventrix family and Rockdill. Netizens finally had some juicy drama to gossip about, and the internet was practically blowing up. Looking at the chaos he had caused, Kim Do-hyuk smiled with pure satisfaction. This is what modern warfare looks like. Even Bart couldn't help but praise him, saying that for someone who lived 300 years ago, his adaptation to modern culture was lightning fast. Back when he first reincarnated, Kim Do-hyuk did face a lot of struggles, but he focused on getting used to everything by browsing online forums and keeping up with the news, which is why he's so tech-savvy now. Scanning through all the newly published articles, Kim Do-hyuk let out a bored sigh. What a shame. I only wanted to target Rockdill, but all these reporters went ahead and attacked the entire Ventrix family instead. What he didn't expect, though, was that this incident would force the head of the family to hold a press conference and make a public apology. In front of the cameras, she put on a sincere face, but cleverly denied all the allegations and refused to take any personal responsibility, only expressing her regrets and promising to visit and personally apologize to the victim without offering any further explanation. Watching the news, Rockdill's face turned completely pale with fright. Right at that moment, his father called to inform him that he had to return to England immediately by order of the family. The next day, in exchange for getting his prison sentence reduced to just 5 years, Sarah sold himself out and took the fall as the mastermind instead of that bastard. He was shipped off like cargo on a prison transport boat across the Pacific Ocean, heading toward the prison tower. This place was a depriving prison created by an S-rank constellation, capable of turning contractors back into ordinary humans. Jizera thought to himself happily that all he had to do was keep his mouth shut and ensure Rockdill could stay in the family. If he pulled this off, they would slash his sentence to 5 years. Otherwise, things would get extremely ugly. And besides, 5 years is absolutely nothing. His train of thought was abruptly cut short by a bone-chilling voice coming from right beside him. What an ugly face. Before Jazera could even look up, his head was sliced clean off, leaving him no time for any last words. Meanwhile, at the Ventrix mansion, Eden and his son were bowing deeply to the person standing in front of them. She asked, "Rockdill, what do you plan to do now?" The father and son quickly prostrated themselves to apologize, but that was nowhere near enough to calm the family head's wrath. If a simple apology could fix murder, the world would be in absolute chaos. After hearing Rockdill's pathetic excuse, the woman in front of them grew even more furious. A terrifying surge of mana erupted from her, scaring them half to death. She stepped forward, getting right in Rockdill's face, and whispered, "What should we do with you, Rock Ventrix?" Only now did he realize what true terror felt like. Cowering like a dog about to be slaughtered, he instantly dropped to his knees. "I'll do absolutely anything to restore our family's honor." Hearing him speak was getting more and more ridiculous. After all, the only way to restore the family's honor was to completely disown him. Hearing the word disown, the old man Eden, who had been silent until now, finally chimed in. Family head, isn't that punishment a bit too harsh? She whipped her head around and snapped. Do you want to end up like your son too? The old man went dead silent, not daring to utter another word. At this point, she wanted nothing more than to execute them or disown them on the spot, but doing so would basically be a confession that her family was behind everything. After pondering for a moment, the family head let out a weary sigh and dismissed them. For now, I won't expel you. Go back to Valhalla and keep your mouth shut. I'll make my final decision after I meet with Kim Do-hyuk. Now, get out of my sight. Even though he was spared for now, Rockdill wasn't stupid enough to not realize that he was bound to be disowned, sooner or later. It was only because the media was breathing down their necks that the family head couldn't act yet. So, before his time ran out, he had to take matters into his own hands. Because absolutely nothing can stand in my way anymore. Rockdill turned to his father and said, Father, you have to help me too. The old man had always spoiled his precious son rotten, so it goes without saying. He only warned him to keep things quiet no matter what. Like father, like son. They are both completely rotten to the core. A few days later at Valhalla Academy, upon hearing that the head of the Ventric family was coming in person to apologize, Kim Joo-hyuk found it extremely annoying, and he did not want to meet them at all. But in the end, after some coaxing from his homeroom teacher, and because they were the Academy's biggest financial donors, he reluctantly agreed to the meeting. She walked in putting on quite the aristocratic air, but Kim Joo-hyuk could not care less. Nice to meet you, Kim Joo-hyuk. I am the head of the Ventric family, Adelia Ventric. Kim Joo-hyuk just threw back a half-hearted, yeah, nice to meet you. After a super awkward staring contest, she was the first to speak. We issued an official statement right after the attack, but unfortunately, neither the media nor the public seems to believe it. So, here is what I want to say to you. I want to offer an opportunity to clear up this misunderstanding. Could you help us out? Kim Joo-hyuk was basically rolling his eyes, thinking, oh, please. She was acting like her blatant lies were absolute facts. What a total hypocrite. No. Kim Joo-hyuk shot her down with a single word without even wasting a second thought on it. To sweeten the deal, Adelia started listing all kinds of benefits, from full sponsorship until graduation, to securing a job afterward, and even paving a golden path for him to become South Korea's top hunter. Anyone else would be drooling over an offer like that, but our guy had way too much pride to care about her pocket change. Kim Joo-hyuk pointed right at her face and snapped back, I do not need any of your rewards. I just want to watch how you all live with the sheer embarrassment that Rockdill has dragged the Ventric name through. That completely set her off. Her smug, aristocratic mask shattered into a hideous expression, and she spat out, You piece of trash. Who do you think you are talking to? I only came to this filthy academy to make things easy for you, yet you dare to act so arrogant? Should I just kill you right here and now? I was trying to be generous and give you a chance, and you just throw it right back in my face? God, she really had a filthy mouth on her. She thought she sounded tough, but Kim Joo-hyuk was not about to back down. This guy was a 10 out of 10 when it came to arguing, and absolutely second to none. Did you not just say the Ventric family had absolutely nothing to do with the assassination attempt on me? To cover up that lie, you were willing to dump a mountain of cash and time on me, but now you are threatening to kill me? Besides, even if you did try to attack me, you could never kill me anyway. Adelia looked ready to flip a table, but knowing she could not do a thing, she stormed off, warning Kim Joo-hyuk to remember her face. Once things quieted down, Barche grumbled, Master, did you really have to make such a big scene? Even if I am a constellation, I do not want to get dragged into this nonsense. Already irritated, Kim Joo-hyuk found the perfect target to vent his frustration on. That is what you get for talking back when your master is pissed. He tore into Barche so hard the poor guy could not even lift his head. Completely exhausted by all these rich snobs, Kim Joo-hyuk decided to drag his tired body to the training room a bit early. But of course, as the ultimate drama magnet, trouble followed him everywhere. Right at the entrance, he stumbled upon Choi Jin-gun and his sister having a heated argument. Overhearing Choi Jin-gun look down on Choi Arin and demand she drop out of the entrance exam made his blood boil, so he just had to step in. Kim Joo-hyuk jumped right into the argument, pointing his finger directly at the guy's face to look intimidating. You are a real piece of work, you know that? How dare you try to force someone to give up after they have put in so much sweat and tears to train? Suddenly caught off guard by this random guy talking trash, Choi Jin-gun asked calmly, Do you even know who you are talking to? Kim Joo-hyuk did not give a single damn about who his family was. If he found someone annoying, he was going to lay into them, no exceptions. I swear, why is today filled with pathetic lowlifes who love to show off their fake authority? I do not care if you are a king, a president, or whatever. Do not come onto academy grounds demanding things from a student. Now, if you are done barking, get lost. Having finished his rant, he turned to Choi Erin, looking for backup. The girl, who had been completely frozen until now, immediately nodded in total agreement. Annoyed by this sudden verbal beatdown, Choi Jin-gun did not want to waste his breath anymore. He turned around and stormed off, but not before throwing a final warning to his little sister. You will understand during the exam. It felt like a lifesaver had just been thrown to Choi Erin, and she immediately thanked Kim Joo-hyuk for stepping in to defend her. But as it turned out, Choi Erin was a bit more unhinged than he expected. She pointed out that if she had been the one doing the cursing, she would not have told him to get lost, but would have said, "Screw your mother," instead. Before the words could even leave my mouth, he jumped in and cut me off, dragging me right into the training room for a brutal workout. We had already wasted way too much time on that bastard. A few days later, Kim Joo-hyuk packed his gear and headed to a hill near Se-hyuk to start his little treasure hunt. His student, filled with curiosity, whispered a question. "Master, haven't you already found tons of artifacts and mana stones from your old records?" The student just did not get it. Human greed has no limits. Of course, Kim Joo-hyuk already had those, but he still wanted to see what else might be hiding in the remaining records. Besides, he hoped to find some kind of miracle hidden within to help overcome the major physical weaknesses of his current fragile body. Meanwhile, over at the Joo-hyuk clan, a massive crowd of reporters and journalists had gathered. They were all there because today was the day of the selection exam. Inside, clan leader Choi Jong-seo asked his two children one last time, just to be absolutely sure. As I announced before, the selection exam is about to begin. If you pass, you will be recognized as the heir of the clan. Fail, and you will be exiled. Are you both ready? Their confident response left him quite satisfied. He then went on to explain the rules of the exam. The objective was simple. Find the twin blades hidden somewhere on the mountain. Whoever finds the twin blades and brings them back to me will be declared the winner of this trial. It does not matter how you do it, but killing is strictly forbidden. Now, let the exam begin. The signal went off. Choi Erin immediately bolted into the forest to search, while her brother, on the other hand, took his sweet time. The guy already had a scheme cooked up. All he had to do was wait for her to find the twin blades, then swoop in and snatch them away. Easy peasy. The position of clan leader would be practically handed to him. What a lazy, freeloading prick, always wanting the reward without doing any of the actual work. Putting his thoughts into action, he quickly set his dirty plan in motion. While his sister was searching high and low, completely exhausted but finally catching the trail of the twin blades, her brother suddenly swaggered out to ask some utterly useless questions. "Are you busy tracking it using mana traces? Who taught you that trick?" Since Choi Erin was a good girl, she always answered when asked, and this time was no different. She simply replied, "Joo-hyuk," before drawing her sword and getting into a stance, ready for a one-on-one showdown. Before this, her friend had taught her to completely relax her entire body, release her mana faintly through her fingertips and toes, and then slowly spread that magic throughout her body until she could feel it flowing, even in the individual strands of her hair. By slowly and gently sensing mana, she could even pick up on the energy radiating from the people around her. Thanks to that, she could easily track residual magic left on the ground or lingering in the air. Honestly, it was so mind-blowing, she was basically a human bloodhound. But thanks to Kim Joo-hyuk's training, she was steadily getting closer to her goal, if only her annoying jerk of a brother had not jumped out to block her path. Hearing the name of the guy who had insulted him before, Choi Gang-eun scoffed in contempt, stepping closer to his sister with a sneer. "Kim Joo-hyuk? Ah, I know that guy. Isn't he that shameless bastard you were hanging out with? He looked like a total idiot, but I guess he actually has some skills." Insulting her was one thing, but trash-talking Kim Joo-hyuk? This guy was practically begging for a beatdown. Biting her lip, Choi Erin snapped back. "He is way stronger than someone like you. Why are you even here?" That hit Choi Gang-eun right where it hurt. He drew his sword with a smug grin and swung it forward. "Why do you think?" "This is exactly why I'm here." Thinking his sister was still as weak as a wet noodle, he acted like he was the king of the world. But just seconds after acting all tough, reality slapped him right in the face. Bracing against her attack, Choi Gang-eun wondered in shock. Wait, not only is she blocking me, but she's actually pushing me back? How the hell? Since when did she get this strong? Choi Arin pressed her attack relentlessly, swinging her sword without showing even a hint of exhaustion. Panting heavily like a dog, Choi Gang-un grumbled. Did they teach you how to be a wild boar at school? Because you're charging like one. Choi Arin did not care. His cheap trash talk could not shake her focus. She coldly shot back, give up on finding the twin blades. Now he was absolutely livid. Getting pushed to his limits by a girl and then being told to give up, there was no way he could swallow his pride. Flying into a blind rage, Choi Gang-un stomped the ground to build momentum and lunged straight at her. Choi Arin quickly read his movement, spinning her sword and slashing upward at just the right moment, causing him to lose his balance and crash to the ground. With his weapon knocked away, she flipped her hilt and drove a hard strike right into his stomach. Taking the full force of the combo, Choi Gang-un was left sprawled on the ground, completely knocked out. Only then did she finally let out a sigh of relief. She had only hoped to land a single hit, but she never expected to deliver such a devastating, decisive blow. With no time to waste, Choi Arin grabbed her weapon and prepared to rush off to find the twin blades. You didn't actually think you won, did you? The voice calling out from behind made her freeze in her tracks. When she spun around to look, her brother had completely lost control. A dark, ominous shroud of mana wrapping around his body. You have fallen to the dark side. Have you become a demon? Why would you do this? Choi Arin stared at him, demanding answers. Choi Gang-un remained silent. Without wasting a single word, he lunges forward, aiming his sword straight for Erin's vitals. Caught off guard, she takes a brutal slash straight across her stomach. Turns out, he has joined the third most dangerous evil organization in the world, the Devoted Society, which is how he got so incredibly powerful. Clutching her wound, she looks up at her brother, asking with pure confusion, "Is joining them really that much better? What about your own life?" It's a question so clueless, it actually makes him burst out laughing. Slinging the blade over his shoulder, Choi Jin-gun bluntly replies, "Listen, I want ultimate strength and absolute power. I want to rise above petty, ordinary needs and have it all." Then, he goes on a rant, whining about how hard it is being the eldest son of the Choi Jin family, constantly forced to be the perfect role model. The only reason he's even stayed with the Choi Jin family this long is because of the old man's constant surveillance and his own greed for the position of family head. And on top of that, the ultimate requirement to enter the Devoted Society is the family's relic, the twin blades. If Erin's older sister hadn't entered the first selection test 10 years ago, he would have already laid his hands on that relic. Back then, he was only 12 years old and couldn't control his dark desires, so he murdered her up on the mountain before even searching for the twin blades. But talk about rotten luck, he still couldn't find the relic, ended up severely injured, and ultimately failed that test. But now that he's grown, he won't let another mistake happen. Choi Jin-gun lifts his sword with an excited, twisted grin and says, "Make sure to say hi to your sister for me." Erin can only sit there helplessly, waiting for death to claim her. After all, she doesn't have a single ounce of strength left to fight back. But hey, it's not over until it's over, and she isn't in the grave just yet. Right at the absolute last second, with her life hanging by a thread, Kim Joo-hyuk appears like a god, blocking the blade in the nick of time. He glares at the guy and snaps, "What the hell do you think you're doing? What kind of crazy brother points a sword at his own sister's throat?" Before the words even fully land, he delivers a devastating kick that sends the guy flying several yards. As it turns out, Kim Joo-hyuk came here looking for a treasure, and since it was right in this spot, he was able to jump in and stop the madness just in time. Otherwise, Erin would only be visiting her family in a casket. Furious at the sudden interruption, Choi Jin-gun charges forward like a madman, screaming, "This is family business, so butt out." He's all talk though, because his strike completely misses. To make matters worse, he gets absolutely wrecked by Kim Joo-hyuk's combo and collapses instantly. You'd think that's the end of it, but nope, this guy's got way too much stubborn stamina. Choi Jin-gun slowly staggers back to his feet, a massive surge of demonic energy erupting from his sword. Completely losing control, his mind is now consumed by nothing but sheer bloodlust as he lunges straight for his opponent. "You bastard, you're just a first-year rookie at Valhalla, and you think you can defeat the leader of a criminal syndicate?" He screams at the top of his lungs, charging with every last bit of his strength. But Kim Joo-hyuk is no pushover either. Even though his opponent is attacking with a magic-infused sword, he dodges it effortlessly and turns around to hand the self-proclaimed crime boss a massive beatdown. Realizing he has no other choice, the guy pulls out a mysterious stone and swallows it whole. Oh, turns out that's an artificial relic containing the power of his contracted constellation. Just like that, Choi Jin-gun gets a massive power boost. A colossal wave of magic erupts to flex his power, blanketing the entire sky. The reporters and even the head of the Choi Jin family are absolutely horrified. Traditionally, outsiders aren't allowed to interfere in the selection test, but this situation is way too dangerous, so he rushes over to see for himself. While the father is worried sick, his own son is the one causing all this chaos. Ecstatic, Choi Jin-gun sneers. This is a special effect, a fraction of the power I got from my constellation contract. This is where you die. Right on cue, a series of notifications announce the arrival of the constellation. The destruction dragon recognizes the relic and descends, baring its fangs as if it hasn't been this thrilled in ages. After roaring its lungs out, the destruction dragon activates its skill, the Eye of Gluttony. But the moment it locks eyes with Kim Joo-hyuk, a sudden wave of panic hits, causing it to immediately deactivate the skill, only to repeatedly activate and deactivate it like it's having a total breakdown. Ultimately, the closer it looks at Kim Joo-hyuk, the more terrified it gets, to the point where it completely ignores the relic's call, tears up the contract, and hightails it out of there. If it doesn't get moving, even a constellation would end up dead. Staring at the dumbfounded guy, Kim Joo-hyuk uses his sword hilt to deliver a free bonus strike. Over at the residence of the devoted society's leader, Dragon King Hannibal, the poor guy gets absolutely blasted by that very same dragon for dragging it into such a massive mess. Suddenly getting chewed out for no apparent reason, he can only bow his head and take the heat, swearing to himself that he will find out exactly what went wrong. What on earth could make a constellation that terrified? After securing his treasure, Kim Joo-hyuk rushes back to his dorm room. Holding the book of divine martial arts in his hands, he's absolutely ecstatic, clutching it tight and taking a deep sniff. This is a manual containing a chi-refining breathing technique that can boost a person's mana to an extremely high level. Curiously, Barshay asks, "Is it really that different from the technique you used in your past life, Master?" Ecstatic, Kim Joo-hyuk explains that the breathing technique he used before was complete garbage. Back when he was weak, he just bought some random manual at a market, mastered it, and used it until the very end, because it was nothing special. Barshay is completely speechless. He just bought some random trash, and yet he still managed to grind his way to the absolute peak, getting scared and bowing down so easily. If they had actually found something good, they probably would have slaughtered everyone. Besides, before discovering the divine martial art, Kim Joo-hyuk could not change his breathing technique anymore because his old style was already deeply ingrained in his system. That is why he ended up losing to Barsha. But not anymore. In this lifetime, he will start fresh with a completely new training method. Kim Joo-hyuk smirked slyly and mysteriously stroked the book, a brand new plan already mapped out in his head. I need to put my physical training on hold for a while, since I have to master the divine martial art first. Just as he was happily scheming, his train of thought was abruptly cut off by Barsh. He curiously asked if things had ended well back on the mountain. Kim Joo-hyuk was plenty confident. He had left the moment he heard someone approaching, and since he had strictly told Aaron not to sell him out, there was nothing to worry about. The only ones in a real bind right now were the Choi family. Since the media had showed up to cover their successor selection test, the scandal was blasted all over the news instantly. The Choi family had brought utter disgrace upon themselves. It is no surprise that they colluded with the worst villain group in the world, the Devout Society. At least, that is what the journalists wrote. But that was not all. Aside from Choi Kang-un being handed over to the police, the association also sent them a warning letter. Fortunately, there was a silver lining to all of this. Ireen's injuries were not too severe, and she was quickly taken in for treatment. A few articles even hailed her as a hero for taking down a member of the Devout Society. The whole situation was pretty messy, but the media seemed to be on her side. Noticing the family head's lingering anxiety, a subordinate spoke up. "Isn't this a relief, sir? The selection test might have ended in chaos, but the next family head has been decided. These news articles will only help solidify her position as the successor." Patriarch Choi felt there was truth to that, but he still had some doubts about Aaron defeating Kang-un all on her own. A few days later, Aaron seemed to be recovering well from the incident. However, she could not continue training with Kim Joo-hyuk anymore since her current health would not allow it. Besides, he was currently so caught up with his breathing technique that he did not even have the time to torment himself with training anymore. While piecing the clues together, Barsha recalled a slight hint about the demonic energy that Rokdil and Kang-un had used. However, he still felt like his memories were clouded by something. He had to find a way to satisfy the second condition before this mental barrier could finally be lifted. The second condition, the Great Forest's Eye, was something almost impossible for Kim Joo-hyuk to reach, as he was only allowed to go there during his final exam. Feeling completely drained, he scratched his head in frustration, trying to figure out how to find that Great Forest's Eye when his teacher suddenly called him to the office for a talk. As it turned out, there was an inter-school competition coming up next month. So, the academy was finalizing their lineup and decided to select the students with the highest scores from the recent midterm exam. Of course, Kim Joo-hyuk had absolutely no chance of escaping his fate as their designated errand boy. Before the teacher could even pop the question, Kim Joo-hyuk casually blurted out, "I refuse." Kim Lee-gun felt totally shut down but kept his cool, staring at him as he replied, "I haven't even gotten to the important part yet." With a million things on his plate, the last thing Kim Joo-hyuk wanted was to sit here and listen to his nonsense, so he urged the teacher to spit it out already. The three largest hunter training academies in the world are South Korea's Valhalla, China's White Lotus, and the United States' Valiant Academy. Each school will select a few first-year students to represent them and face off against one another. The competition includes one-on-one duels, a maze escape, and various other tests. Just listening to it gave Kim Joo-hyuk a massive headache, so he yawned, waiting for the good part that seemed like it would never come. Just as he was about to reject the offer again, the teacher put on a mysterious look and said, "But don't you desperately need to get to the Great Forest's Eye as soon as possible?" That single question instantly made Kim Joo-hyuk change his tune, and he curiously waited for the teacher to elaborate. Yes, that is where the final exam is scheduled to take place, and the inter-school competition will be held there as well. It is basically going to be the same as the final exam, and of course, whoever passes it will be completely exempt from taking the finals. Now that sounded pretty sweet. If he had just said that in the first place, they would not have wasted so much time. With that condition on the table, Kim Joo-hyuk naturally agreed to join right away. Meanwhile, over in the United Kingdom, the head of the Ventric family, Adelia, was questioning her servant about the ongoing plan and the whereabouts of Rokdil and his father. There wasn't much to say about family matters, but the servant, being a total gossip, shared a rather shocking piece of news. Apparently, they were building a literal tower out of paper bills in the market. To quote the servant directly, "To put it mildly, ma'am, they are building it with raw cash." And according to his sources, Barsha was the one directly in charge of the operation. But calling him in charge was a stretch, since Barsha did not have a clue what on earth his constellation was actually trying to do. The constellation had only mentioned that it was a gift, a present for someone. On top of that, his constellation ordered Barsh to track down the person who sold the ring back then as quickly as possible. The very next day, while Kim Lagoon was hard at work, head coach Lee Song-chan approached him, asking if he had finalized the roster for the upcoming inter-school competition. Kim Lagoon nodded, saying everything was set, and handed him the list of participants. Lee Sang-chan was completely taken aback when he spotted Kim Joo-hyuk's name on it. He couldn't believe that arrogant punk had actually agreed to join. Seeing the coach's curiosity, Kim Lagoon quickly explained. At first, he didn't want any part of it. But the moment he found out the event would take place at the Eye of the Great Forest, he did a complete 180 and changed his mind in a split second. Lee Sang-chon said nothing, but deep down, he knew the kid must have some hidden agenda. As the head coach, he had the instructors clear a time slot so he could meet with the team. All 5 participating students showed up, including Yoo Se-hyuk, Ji-soo, Choi Arin, Do Jung-jin, and Kim Joo-hyuk. With the team assembled, the coach went straight to the point. Specifically, there were a total of 3 phases they had to clear. First up is a series of individual duels between students, just like the entrance exam. The second phase is team battle, where all 5 academy representatives form a squad to face off against the other schools. But here is the catch. All 3 teams will fight simultaneously, and the final phase takes place in the Eye of the Great Forest. Hearing the exact thing he was after, Kim Joo-hyuk quieted down and perked up his ears, making sure not to miss a single word. Lee Sang-chon then gave a brief rundown of the forest's terrain. The Eye of the Great Forest is a massive maze, exactly as the name implies, densely packed with thick woods. Unlike a normal forest, the gate is under heavy guard, locked down so tight that not even a fly could sneak through. The only way in is through the main gate, and each person's specific assignment will be handed out on the day of the event. Since they were running out of time, the instructor moved right along to explain the specific details and format of the team battle. With the briefing finished, it was time to jump straight into training. But at that moment, Kim Joo-hyuk suddenly raised his hand to speak up. "Can I train on my own, coach?" Surprisingly, the instructor agreed right away and even asked if anyone else wanted to do the same. Arin figured she would just follow Kim Joo-hyuk's lead, so she also requested to train on her own in peace. In fact, the only reason she even agreed to join the team and compete was because he was doing it. With the meeting wrapped up, everyone quickly dispersed. Out of nowhere, Arin turned to Kim Joo-hyuk and asked, "Should I even bother with the training?" Kim Joo-hyuk was caught off guard, but since he knew her physical condition well, he gave her some solid advice. At that moment, a rather unusual thought was brewing in Arin's mind. She wanted to grow stronger alongside him, to help him achieve his goals, just like he had helped her with hers. 1 month later, on the first day of the inter-school tournament, the students of Valhalla packed the stands, buzzing with excitement. Even Roblin Ventrick showed up, eager to watch the drama unfold. He had already used his father's money to hire a group of assassins with a clear mission: eliminate Kim Joo-hyuk. They were the Samsol trio of Ilshinja, a seasoned 3-man assassin squad that had never once failed a mission. But that was before. Now that they were going up against Kim Joo-hyuk, their perfect record was in serious jeopardy. They plotted to take him down on the 3rd day of the tournament inside the eye of the Great Forest, planning to slip in undetected by tailing another contestant. They knew that during that phase, only cameras would be monitoring the area, and not a single judge would set foot inside the forest. To kick off the tournament, Valhalla's board chairman, Shim Doon, gave a brief speech and introduced the representatives from each school. Looking at the kids gathered down below, head coach Lee Sang-chon felt a knot of worry in his chest. As he was lost in thought, he was suddenly interrupted by veteran instructor Jack Robert. The moment he saw his colleague, Jack mocked Lee's school, calling them third-rate, completely ignoring the fact that his own school did not do any better last year. Jack Robert confidently boasted that this year would be totally different, because they had the son of the leader of the most prestigious contract holders. Yes, Logan's own son. His name was Logan J., a youth contracted to the destroyer of all things. Though not quite on his father's level yet, he could easily take down a fully grown contractor in the blink of an eye. Lee Sang-chon just gave a dry nod and coldly replied, "You will understand why I'm so calm soon enough once you watch this match." The opening duel was Valhalla's Kim Joo-hyuk versus Logan of Heroes. The rules were announced. Basically, the first person to completely incapacitate their opponent wins. Even if someone lands a lethal blow to a weak point with a weapon, the arena's safety system automatically minimizes the physical damage, sending a painful surge of electricity to the target instead. So everyone was free to go absolutely wild with their attacks without any outside interference. Having slept through almost every class, Kim Joo-hyuk was genuinely confused about why they even needed a safety system in the first place. Rolling his eyes, his opponent sighed and explained to the blockhead that they had to stay in fighting shape through day 1 and day 2 if they wanted to compete on day 3. Just then, the starting buzzer rang out. Kim Joo-hyuk rushed in to throw the first strike, but his punch was easily blocked. Looking down on him with utter disdain, his opponent sneered, "Do you honestly think you're strong?" Kim Joo-hyuk offered a polite smile, but his expression instantly turned ice cold as he spat out a chilling challenge. "But how long do you think you can take my punches?" With that, he wound up his fist and drove a devastating blow straight into his opponent's stomach. He lost his footing, clutched his stomach, and stumbled back, but quickly took advantage of the momentum to charge forward with his destroyer technique. After losing just a few strands of hair, Kim Joo-hyuk quickly dodged to the side, raised his leg, and ruthlessly kicked the guy right in the body. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked. Clutching his stomach, Logan tried his best to stand up. Even though he had only taken 2 hits, he felt like he was about to pass out. But he still had an ace up his sleeve. Logan squatted down, shattered the arena floor with sheer force, and gave a light kick, sending debris flying everywhere. It turned out he planned to use the debris as a smokescreen to launch an attack from the shadows. But with Kim Joo-hyuk's sharp hawk eyes, there was absolutely nothing he couldn't see. It didn't take long for him to spot Logan through the flying rocks and deliver a devastating blow straight to his face. Just like that, the round ended, leaving Jack Rover utterly stunned. He couldn't help but exclaim that the kid was an absolute monster. After that, the match continued. Kim Joo-hyuk completely dominated the field, winning one match after another without losing a single hair. Finally, in the championship round, his opponent turned out to be none other than Choi A-rin. Since she already came from a loaded family, she was planning to forfeit, and let him have the scholarship. I don't care who wins, but don't forfeit. Everyone has gathered here, so we should show them our true combat skills. Kim Joo-hyuk spoke up to get Choi A-rin to reconsider. And of course, when the instructor speaks, the student has to listen. Kim Joo-hyuk stretched and warmed up, promising to go easy on her and make sure she wouldn't get hurt. But his idea of going easy was a bit questionable. The match ended with Choi A-rin face-planting hard into the dirt, prompting the onlookers to complain that he was way too ruthless. Kim Joo-hyuk stubbornly insisted that he did go easy on her, arguing that he didn't even mean to hit her stomach and that it was just a total accident. Her sword tip suddenly veered toward my stomach, so I just swatted it away, and well, this happened. Looking down at her lying there, he felt like he had grown much stronger, and this girl was certainly no slouch either. There was still one more day to go before they could reach the eye of the great forest. Feeling a bit impatient, Kim Joo-hyuk went out of his way to find his instructor and ask about it. He walked up to him and asked, "Excuse me, instructor, about tomorrow's match. If I finish early, can I move on to the next round?" The instructor wasn't too sure either, so he pulled out the rulebook to check. It mentioned a few exceptions, but basically, if a task was completed before the afternoon or even earlier, students could take on the next mission at the teacher's discretion. Hearing this, his eyes lit up like high beams as he quickly followed up. "It says it's entirely up to you. What do you think, instructor? Can I move on to the next task?" The head coach was completely helpless against his disciple, so he had to clarify. As long as he finished early and reported to the faculty office, he could start the new task in the afternoon. Now go get some sleep and stop loitering around here. The next day, inside the sacred land of Jusin in Valhalla, the president went over the second task of the joint competition. This would be a team match where 5 representatives from each school would face off against each other in this mountainous region. Since it was held on rugged terrain, the audience would watch the action live via 3-dimensional holographic screens. With only a few minutes left before the match was set to begin, Kim Joo-hyuk had yet to show his face, leaving the entire team quite anxious. Do-seon kept complaining, silently cursing him and wondering what ditch he was dead in. The moment she caught a glimpse of his figure appearing in the distance, she raised her chin and barked, "Do you have any idea what time it is? You were supposed to be here 30 minutes early. Did you just completely ignore the instructor's advice?" Honestly, there were times he just wanted to lung forward and shut her annoying mouth. But for the sake of the team, Kim Joo-hyuk had to swallow his pride and suck it up. He then scratched his head, apologized, and said he would handle everything. Hearing this, Do-seon immediately protested, reminding him that this was a team game, not an individual competition. She then pointed her finger at him and lectured him non-stop. But knowing how hot-tempered she was, Kim Joo-hyuk didn't bother arguing. Instead, he turned to the others and asked if anyone else had any objections. Suddenly, Choi A-rin raised her hand and asked to go with him. Thinking she was about to object, Do-seon was briefly filled with false hope. As a result, a frustrated Do-seon could only stand there and scream in anger, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk to fly solo. Before the match started, he turned back to tell her to shut her mouth because she was being incredibly annoying, adding that he still needed to prepare for his trip to the forest eye in the afternoon. The announcement to start immediately rang out. It didn't take long for Kim Joo-hyuk to track down the White Lotus team and treat them to a few slashes of love. In just a few minutes, he sent the entire team packing early so they could have some rest. The news of White Lotus's elimination was quickly broadcast to all the players. Logan broke into a cold sweat as he read the notification. It had only been 10 minutes. While he was lost in thought, a teammate brought him back to reality by reporting that they sensed magic nearby. Oddly enough, it wasn't a group, but just a single person. Reacting quickly, Logan immediately ordered everyone to take defensive positions. The 2 at the front raised their magic shields. The mage prepared a buff, another reinforced the barriers, while Logan himself stood ready to strike. Everything was prepared so thoroughly, it was as if they were about to face a massive, super-powered army. Seriously? That's insane. One clueless teammate couldn't help but ask, "Wait, he's just one guy. Do we really have to go this far?" Those who had already faced Kim Joo-hyuk quickly chimed in to set her straight. His power is way beyond what you'd expect from a regular high school kid. While they're still waiting, a team member suddenly reports that the magic is fading away. Thinking they've finally left, Logan lets out a huge sigh of relief. Little did they know, Kim Joo-hyuk had been lurking up in the trees, watching their every move. The second they let their guard down, he swoops down out of nowhere and lands a brutal strike right to the opposing captain's face. Before the others can even process what's happening, he beats them to a pulp. They drop to the ground without even getting a chance to throw a single punch. Talk about true gender equality, he hands out a one-hit knockout to each of them, no exceptions. Glancing at the elimination notification, Kim Joo-hyuk slings his sword over his shoulder and exclaims with absolute excitement. Now, I can move on to the Forest of Eyes quest, right? Back in the Valhalla monitoring room, the instructors still couldn't wrap their heads around the reality of what just happened. The entire match wrapped up in a mere 23 minutes, and Kim Joo-hyuk carried the whole thing entirely on his own. One of them couldn't help but speak up. Actually, just walking there and back took him 20 minutes. The actual battle only lasted about 3 minutes. For a prestigious national competition to be completely turned upside down by a single kid like Kim Joo-hyuk was downright embarrassing. The Academy president stroked his chin, looking deeply concerned. Well, today's schedule is completely ruined. We have a real problem on our hands. Hearing that, the head coach pulled out the rulebook and pointed out a clause that allowed them to start the next match on the same day if there was enough time left. With no other choice, the president and the other instructors had to go along with the plan. Over in the waiting room, the Valhalla Academy team sat in silence, looking utterly drained. Yoo So-yeon, however, had been glaring at Kim Joo-hyuk with absolute resentment. She was supposed to lead them since the coach had appointed her as the captain, but before she could even do anything, he completely stole her spotlight. To make matters worse, she had lost to Choi Arin in yesterday's match, which only fueled her anger even more. Yoo So-yeon had heard that Kim Joo-hyuk was the one who trained Choi Arin, so she was actually thinking about swallowing her pride and begging him to teach her too. Right at that moment, an announcement flashed on everyone's phones, revealing that the next mission would start a day early. Before everyone set off, Kim Joo-hyuk laid down the law. I'm heading to the Forest of Eyes on my own. The rest of you are going to have to survive by yourselves. But hey, if things get really bad, you can call me. Even after he finished speaking, Yoo So-yeon kept glaring at him. Kim Joo-hyuk couldn't resist mocking her, asking, "Got something to say, little bird?" Infuriated by the sudden nickname, she snapped and chewed him out on the spot. By 1 in the afternoon, all the participating teams had gathered in front of the labyrinth gate. Just like the previous quests, the audience could watch everything live on the screens. Before they stepped inside, the president went over the details of the match and the scoring criteria. The Forest of Eyes is a labyrinth filled with towering, ancient trees. Inside, you'll find an environment that is completely unique. The rain there never stops, but the monsters are relatively low level, so they don't pose much of a threat. In reality, the relentless downpour and dense, thick brush are your biggest obstacles. This entire challenge is designed to put your survival skills to the test. After 5 hours, the better your physical condition, the higher your score. The president made sure to emphasize one critical rule. Any combat between opposing teams is strictly forbidden. Now, let the challenge begin, the old president called out. Meanwhile, inside an abandoned warehouse in Valhalla, 3 members of an assassin squad had gathered, gearing up to infiltrate the Forest of Eyes. Just a few minutes into the match, the surveillance cameras inside the labyrinth suddenly went dark, and all communication with the main gate was completely severed. Realizing this was a major crisis that threatened the lives of every student in the maze, the head coach urged the other staff members to enter the Forest of Eyes for a rescue operation. But the moment they arrived at the entrance, they were hit with a horrifying sight. The guards were already dead, and the entrance was completely demolished, buried under piles of heavy rubble. It would take at least 1 hour just to clear a path inside. Meanwhile, before Logan could even react, and drove a blade straight through his abdomen, Logan gasped in sheer disbelief, wondering how his attacker had gotten behind him so quickly, and smirked and said, "Still haven't figured it out? Take a look right in front of you." "Holy crap, why are there 2 of them?" Logan went pale with shock. The Anne standing in front of him let out a sinister laugh before plunging another blade right into his chest. "This is what you call a clone." Logan was completely helpless, left with 0 chance to fight back. Leah asked Anne if he had finished Logan off for good, but admitted he deliberately stabbed him, so he would die a slow, agonizing death just for fun. But right at that moment, a red-haired girl suddenly emerged from the shadows. Realizing they had a witness, the assassins clicked their tongues and decided to just eliminate everyone. Anne nonchalantly told Leah to keep her concealment skill active. Leah urged him to wrap things up quickly. Letting out a twisted laugh, Anne said he got it and charged straight toward the red-haired girl. Meanwhile, Kim Joo-hyuk was leaping through the forest like a bird, searching for Megarona's house within the Forest of Eyes. His quest interface indicated that having Cheonggyeom was the key requirement. Was that so-called Megarona's house, the ruined cottage near the entrance? But that place was nothing but a dense thicket of trees, with no sign of any structure. However, as he zipped past, he spotted a blonde girl standing there, looking completely lost. He panicked and screamed, "Please don't." But of course, Anne wasn't about to stop, just because of a single scream. 3 students from the hero team had already fallen, and the Samsan assassin squad was finding this to be a real drag. Leah was exhausted from having to silence one witness only for another to pop up right after. Even Anne was losing his buzz and getting annoyed. But right at that moment, he spotted someone. That was their exact target this time. Kim Joo-hyuk, the target himself, had practically delivered himself to them. It seemed he heard the screams when I stabbed those guys and rushed right over here. I didn't kill him just because this got way more interesting. Joo-hyuk instantly caught the word target in their conversation. Looking at the people bleeding out on the ground, Joo-hyuk turned to the blonde girl. "I will handle those guys, so you go stop the bleeding for the injured first. They are still alive." At a glance, it was obvious that Punk didn't stab any vital spots to make them log out of life instantly. Either that, or he purposely did it so they would slowly bleed to death. Talk about a sick, twisted hobby. I'm in a terrible mood right now, so you better answer my question. Did you guys sneak in here? If so, I'm going to end this quietly. And couldn't believe his ears hearing that from a mere student. He was absolutely sure this kid had no idea what deep trouble he was in, which was why he was talking so big. Right now, Joo-hyuk was completely isolated in this labyrinth. The only way in or out of this maze has been completely destroyed by us, and the same goes for the surveillance drones. So, do you really think the instructors will find out? Let's see. Either way, there is no way they can get in here right now. The entrance has completely collapsed. To clear those massive rocks blocking the way, it would take them at least 1 whole hour. Anne seemed extremely confident in the plan they had laid out. But to Joo-hyuk, that 1 hour was just the maximum time he would have to endure the rain in this massive forest before finding a way out. And had no idea what kind of nonsense Joo-hyuk was babbling about, but he was more than ready to send the kid straight to hell. It was that clone technique again, but this time, weirdly enough, his blade stabbed deep into the ground instead of skewering someone like before. Anne had no idea where Joo-hyuk had teleported to. "You guys are totally finished." In a split second, Joo-hyuk's sword slammed directly into the middle of Anne's nose. He got hit so hard that blood sprayed from his nose, sending him flying face first into the dirt like a human mop. Leah could only stare in utter disbelief. While the 2 girls were still frozen in shock, he dashed behind them and decisively slammed a heavy blow right onto the back of each of their heads. And just like that, all 3 members of the Samsan squad were completely knocked out by Kim Joo-hyuk, left eating dirt on the ground. "Hey, blonde girl, use your magic to stop the bleeding for the unconscious people right now. If you can't handle it alone, run toward the west. There are Valhalla students in that direction." The blonde girl immediately did her absolute best. Right then, and woke up, completely terrified to see his 2 teammates lying flattened next to him. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately got in his face, mocking his teammates for being pathetically weak, and quickly raised his dagger in retaliation. "Before I beat you to a pulp, answer me. You said I was the target, so who's the client?" Even though Anne was a villain, he was an assassin with strict principles, so there was no way he would ever reveal his client's identity. This was actually the first time Kim Joo-hyuk had ever dealt with someone so tight-lipped, which made things a bit tricky. Anne was also caught off guard because it was his first time meeting someone as annoying as our main character, but this time, he was going to fight with everything he had. However, this clone attack couldn't touch Joo-hyuk at all. Anne was completely stunned because his clone's strike was absolutely silent, making it impossible to understand how this kid had dodged it. "Why do you keep sneak attacking from behind so cheaply? Hey, why on earth should I fight fair? And seriously, why do you have to keep aiming right for my nose? Is this guy trying to make sure he can never get a nose job again, or what?" Kim Joo-hyuk still stubbornly demanded to know who the client was, and also flat out refused to speak for the honor of an assassin. "Oh, really? Then I'm just gonna beat you to my heart's content." Honestly, this guy acts more like a villain than the actual bad guys. By the time head coach Lee Sang-ryol arrived with backup, the students had already gathered to treat each other's wounds. The scene left the instructors completely shocked. Mr. Jack was the first to react, anxiously rushing over to check on his student, Logan. The boy had already been treated, so aside from his body being a bit stiff, there was no major issue. Mr. Jack literally cried tears of joy. Mr. Lee scowled as he scanned the area. then turned to ask the students what had happened. Logan then explained how they had been ambushed by a group of villains, a team of 3, consisting of 1 male and 2 females. Lee Sang-ryol guessed it was the Samsan squad, so he urgently asked where they were now. Logan pointed to a nearby tree trunk. Lying over there were Leah and Anne, completely knocked out cold. Kim Do-hyuk had already dealt with all of them, leaving Lee Sang-ryol utterly stunned.